And we are live. Welcome back to the Black Muze Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muse. We are back. We are doing it live. We are doing it big. Every week, we're going to have a new episode of the Black Muze Podcast. We have two different episode types. One episode type is when we do our current events. So it's kind of like a Costco sampling, if you will, of my and at least one other person's takes on current events that are happening locally here in the United States. And then we have a more deep dive episode where we pick one topic and kind of dive deep on it for about an hour to an hour and a half. So we got follow-up episodes where myself and at least one other co-host are going to be reviewing the documentary What is a Woman? Some more on that later. But today's episode, we're going to be focusing on more current events. And there's been a lot of news this week, that's for sure. So without further ado, let me bring in my co-host once again, the man, the legend, Ibrahima. What's up, Ibrahima? How you doing?
What's going on, everybody? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As always, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good this fine morning. I can't wait to get into the news. Been a lot of news coming out this week.
A lot of stuff, man.
Right? There's a lot. I was getting nervous. We might have to extend this because there's a lot of stuff to cover, man. There's a lot of stuff to cover. Are you excited about today's episode?
Yes, I am. There are things here that are quite satisfying, at least, to say the least. Things that I thought were very. We have more supporting evidence. I feel like some people owe me an apology.
Some people owe you an apology. Somebody owe
you.
Well,
so a lot of people owe these men.
Okay. All right. Is it about vengeance for you? Is it about payback or?
It's not even about all that. It's just certain things that were set to be fake news. It's always great.
All right, and I'm going to push back on you, no matter what side of the aisle a person is that I'm arguing with, or I'm entertaining or discussing. I'm going to push back. I'm going to play devil's advocate. So
I'd be offended if you didn't.
All right, let's get into it. So for our first story, we have the news, kind of an update, so to speak, on Twitter. And the first kind of article that I brought up was from I don't know if it's Reuters or Reuters. I always pronounce it wrong. Whichever one is the right one, default to that. And I apologize for whatever one is the wrong one. But so there's been a little bit of a kerfuffle, and I've been trying to get that word into our podcast for a while, over a Twitter executive who's come forward as a whistleblower and aired some of Twitter's dirty laundry, and done so in a way and at a time that might actually help Elon Musk win his legal battle against Twitter, I should say. So the headline reads, Twitter staff exodus accelerates amid Musk battle, whistleblower complaint. So there's been a whistleblower who's come forward, and this article is honing in on the fact that Twitter staff is now exiting en masse. And it has this feeling, the headline has this kind of sense of like this is a sinking ship and everybody's trying to get off of it because the whistleblower revealed or is making claims that a lot of people suspected, particularly those right of center, about the nature of Twitter censorship, and even went so far as to make claims or accusations or allegations, let's say, that there may be, and this may goes too far because there doesn't seem to be any incontrovertible proof yet, but that there may be foreign spies working for Twitter. I think it's interesting that specifically the employee attrition is currently 18.3%. Twitter execs told staff during a company-wide meeting. And that was so before Musk made his $44 billion offer to buy the company, attrition hovered between 14% and 16%, which was consistent with competitors. So there's been an increase in the attrition rate of employees. So that's what's being cited as support, that people are leaving en masse. And there may be various different reasons. It may not just be because the whistleblower came forward and it's like Twitter's caught with their pants down. It may just be that this makes it more likely for Twitter to be passed on to the hands of Elon Musk, and a lot of people maybe don't want that. So it's an interesting thing. It's an ongoing and developing story. There's a lot to it, but just kind of like overall, I'm wondering kind of where you stand on the story, Ibrahima.
Yeah. So as far as this goes, there have been, Elon Musk has made about the number of, and this is something that was kind of this as complete folly. His former blatantly, went out and said that, hey, we don't really have a way to track that. Like, we're not entirely sure what's going on here. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of employees who have complete access to source code, and this is something that's perhaps not the best for ensuring security on such a network. There there are things that can be altered that pretty much a lot of employees have access to, who are not really high ranking members or people who have been vetted to be given that sort of control. And that to me is something that was it was something that people have been talking about even before Elon Musk came along and said it. And to have someone finally even come out and say it this is extremely interesting. And actually, I believe Elon Musk is subpoenaing Jack Dorsey, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah, so that's going to be a very interesting testimony here, because they will definitely ask him about this, and I'd like to know exactly whether or not they have a handle on this or not.
Interesting. Well, let me bring up this. So this is a corollary to the story from Yahoo Finance. The headline reads, ex-Twitter security chief's whistleblower complaint is a godsend for Elon Musk. It goes on to say, Twitter's ex-security chief has filed a whistleblower complaint that claims that if proven true, could make it easier for Elon Musk to walk away from his $44 billion deal to buy the social media company. So I want to make a quick correction. I said earlier that that this whole kerfuffle might make it more likely that Elon Musk acquires Twitter. I think actually the most likely thing is that Elon Musk walks away from the deal, which devalues Twitter because it was, in the minds of some financial experts, overvalued in the first place, therefore making it less profitable, and then all of the bad stuff that comes with that. So I think that's actually the most likely outcome of this. And then maybe after that, subsequent to that, Elon Musk might be able to acquire it for a lot less. That's still undetermined. The article moves on to say that Peter Mudge-Zatko, a widely respected hacker who was fired in January, sent a 200-page complaint to federal officials accusing Twitter's top executives of violating laws and regulations by covering up lax security and eschewing resources to fully understand its prevalence of fake accounts. The issue of fake accounts plays a central role in the legal battle between Musk and Twitter, which is suing him in an attempt to force him to go through with the deal. The whistleblower claims regarding fake accounts present a considerable tide change in the lawsuit. Set for trial in Delaware Chancery Court beginning October 17th. Prior to the claims, some legal experts had predicted that the seller-friendly merger agreement would tip the case in Twitter's favor, with Delaware's chancellor ordering Musk to go through with the deal. This changes everything, quote unquote. University of Iowa law professor Robert Miller said about the claims, quote, "This is like a godsend for Musk. The whistleblower's complaints, if true, are exactly what Musk needs to get out of the deal. I mean, tailor-made." And quote unquote, timing is amazing. Now, if we're putting our conspiracy theory hats on, the timing of this might seem a little fishy to some, and it might suggest that the whistleblower's claims might not be as accurate or true as the person making the claims is making them out to be. However, sometimes bad news is just done with bad timing. Just because the timing is unfortunate for the side that you're rooting for doesn't necessarily mean it's a conspiracy, or doesn't necessarily mean that it's fraudulent. And we can do the same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. Turns out that stuff was actually legitimate, even though people at first were dismissing it as mere Russian disinformation, which is solely intended to sway the outcome of the 2020 election. Which at the time was impending. It hadn't happened yet, but just because the timing is bad for a particular candidate doesn't mean that the accusations or allegations entailed are false. It turns out there was a lot to it. So much to it, in fact, that it's actually kind of become a kind of second level scandal that nothing's being done about it. Yet the former president is having his house raided in Mar-a-Lago. At least that's what people right of censor would be complaining, and they have been complaining about it for a while. So, any thoughts on any of those things that I just said?
Yeah. So as far as the Twitter lawsuit, again, I think that this may have been something that they may have been aware of prior, at least earlier than when it's been released, and just kind of waited for the right time to do so. But we won't know anything for a while, I guess. But as far as the continuous pattern of one side having such grave issues being just like essentially swept under the rug, and in very politically convenient ways, something that I think it goes on conspiracy at this point. It's like it's one thing if you see what's it called, one correlating factor. It's another if you see two or three correlating. At a certain point, you have to ask yourself: is like what is it's like Occam's razor? Is it more simple to assume that this is true than it would be to assume that, well, all of these things, all these factors are all coincidental? At a certain point, you have to go like, well, hey, this answer actually might be more likely because it's a simpler one. And it's just like
So I
things like, sorry, what?
sorry, I just wanted to let everybody know I dropped out for a second. I heard the Occam's razor part moving forward, and I got the gist of what you're saying, but I didn't
Okay,
want to
okay.
cut you off. But go ahead and finish your thought. Then I'm gonna ask you a question. Then we're gonna move on to the next story.
Gotcha. Yeah, just real quick. And not to get off topic too far here. It's like the Mar-a-Lago raid versus what's it called, the Ashley Biden journal. It's like
Diary
people
or
got
the Hunter Biden
raided
laptop.
for having it. Yeah, well, yeah, and the Hunter Biden laptop. Like people were raided for having it, having not committed a crime. It's like whose side are you on here? Like, and Trump's Mar-a-Lago raid, they had gotten documents from him probably, I believe, like in June, and it was a voluntary exchange. And 2 months later, they have to raid him instead of doing it again. So like these are, it's just it raises so many questions to say the least.
Well, I mean, according to the wisdom of the woke, Joe Biden and his family are not existential threats to our democracy, but the Orange Man is forever and always and in all respects bad. So clearly, that justifies a difference in treatment, does it not?
I mean, listen, if these are your your axioms, I guess, I guess,
The
but
woke are
it kind
never
of,
wrong about anything. We know
yeah,
this.
but it's slightly contradictory to a lot of other things that they say, But that's neither here nor there. Like for example, I don't know if you saw Sam Harris talk about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah, I did.
Dude, that
Yeah,
sent me, man. That sent like,
Sam Harris.
oh my
Man,
god,
he was
the
like, Trump University is the worst thing ever. I'm like, what? That's not
what
quite
are
what he
you
said.
talking about, man?
Trump, he said that whatever was with that laptop doesn't even compare to Trump University or something to that effect. Yeah, I saw it, and then he had to kind of backtrack it. It was weird. It was a tacit admission that he was willing to justify letting slide various forms of corruption that are attributable to not only Hunter Biden but also his dad, to the extent that his dad was involved in uh, doing shady dealings in other countries and covering up for his son for political reasons, in contravention of the law, even particularly in his official capacity as vice president. Um, Influence peddling, that kind of thing. Those are all the kinds of. I mean, and then we have him on tape admitting he basically to doing the very thing that Trump got impeached for the first time.
Mhm.
So from somebody who's going to sit back and be objective and is not like somebody like me who's not really that gung ho about Democrats or Republicans, Um, like if like for me, I value consistency, and
Hmm.
opinions or on this kind of thing would be more respectable generally if they were consistent. And so if you're not willing to treat your allies or the people you agree with the exact same way as the people you disagree with, then I can't respect your perspective
Hmm.
because it's undermined by your unwillingness to be fair and sensible. And if your bias is making you demonize everybody who disagrees with you as somehow the way worse than everybody who agrees with you, even though they do exactly the same thing, but from their perspective or from their political side or whatever, then like yeah, you've lost it in terms of your objectivity. And if you demonize objectivity itself as white supremacist, then I really don't respect you. So that's why me and the woke don't get along. That's it. I do want to move on, but I want to give you one quick question. What do you think? What are you hoping for in terms of the outcome of the Twitter kerfuffle or debacle?
I mean, it seems like Elon Musk is trying to get out of this one. Personally, I was very much excited for the change in management, just because of the effect it would have on the sort of discourses that be had on Twitter. It's just, to me, it's become so ridiculous how easily you can be banned for saying things that are provable and true on Twitter. Or if anything, not even, we don't even have to go through provable statements. Um, as far as like your ability to even be wrong, like how about I have an opinion? It might be wrong, but I want to put it out there. That's not really even possible if you have the quote unquote wrong opinion. And it's like
Okay, so
that to
now,
me
okay,
is
you see, you done opened up a whole can of worms, and I was about to move
I
on, but nope, I'm not gonna do it. So I slightly disagree with you.
hmm
Uh, I do think that being heavy-handed with censorship has its own set of problems, and particularly, it could have its own set of problems. It contributes to the dysfunction, the dysfunction with which the dysfunction inherent in our public discourse. Uh, However, I also believe that the ability to broadcast bad ideas or or false things far and wide to where people believe them, unsuspecting people, people who aren't paying attention believe them, is also a problem. And this goes to the whole discourse on misinformation. I actually think that is a legitimate concern. What makes it difficult is that it's not always clear which case we're dealing with respect to any set of claims. Are we dealing with the case of misinformation that is potentially damaging and it could possibly spread far and wide and have negative consequences? Or are we dealing with information that is actually true, that should be spread far and wide, but also could maybe have negative consequences because people might panic or people, people are going to be people. So, for example, if you have, let's say, true information about a relatively deadly disease that's spreading, and we don't have enough masks for everybody to have, or we don't have enough vaccines, or we don't have enough of whatever to ameliorate the threat. Uh, it's telling everybody, even though it's true, that I have some kind of threat of causing and sparking a panic, and then all of the negative outcomes that come with that, right? So even though the information is true, there's still dangers to be considered. And no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, I think you can respect this. So if you're right of center, this kind of thing was what was cited by Trump in not uh, broadcasting the seriousness of COVID originally. The kind of explanation given was one, he didn't want to start a panic, but two, shutting down the entire economy, particularly in election year. So there's a kind of self-servingness to that. But shutting down the economy would have had a whole bunch of dismal negative impacts on a whole bunch of people who depend on the economy to run kind of smoothly in order to make ends meet. Um, so not rushing to that political decision makes sense because of those threats. And it's a tough situation to be in because you have to weigh, you have to do this cost benefit analysis of putting people in danger of deaths via novel disease versus putting people in dangers of having their entire livelihoods compromised. They may still be alive, but they may be very, very close to dead to whatever extent the economy devastates their economic position in life, etc. Um, So it's kind of tough. Now, I actually have criticisms of the Trump administration because I think that there was some self-serving motivations there in terms of not looking bad for election purposes, and I don't think that that should have been a part of the cost-benefit analysis in the way that I think it probably was. But that's the kind of thing. Even when the information is true, there's still an issue. But let's say the information is false. It seems to be even more pernicious, possibly because the information being spread far wide isn't even true, and people are acting as if it is, and that can have there's all kind of devastating consequences there. So like I think it's a lot tougher than just let people speak. What do you think about that?
So on your Trump point, as far as like the politicization of certain information or certain decisions, for example, I think that's something that's it's that's what politicians do. Like I don't think Trump would be immune to it. Their first priority is getting elected, just as the great Thomas Sowell said. First priority is getting elected. Second priority is getting reelected. And whatever is number three is far, far behind those things.
I have a
It's not
problem with that.
surprising.
I have a
It's
problem
you
with that.
have a problem with that.
Yeah. You don't
I
want
mean,
I don't want politicians that prioritize their election prospects over serving the people.
yeah,
It's
but
their election of duty.
that's the thing. Those people, especially in our system where we have almost no term limits for most of those positions, uh, like I'm talking about Congress, for example, their first and biggest priority is to be able to continue serving in the government. It's like it doesn't really matter what your ideas are, what your intentions are if you're outside the government.
No, I get that. There's a practical necessity to wanting to be reelected or stay in office because if you're not in office, you can't do good for the people you're supposed to represent. So I'm not
Or,
denying that that's something that you need to
your special
consider, or that's
interests.
okay, fair enough. But that's so that's the part I disagree with, or that's the part I have a problem with because it implies corruption, or it
Yeah.
instead it's a manifestation of corruption in our system. But what I'm saying is I'm trying to recognize the legitimacy of, like, for practical reasons, there's a practical necessity to actually being elected or being reelected in order to be able to do whatever good things you want to do. I get that. But prioritizing that in principle over serving others is problematic because, like, there's so many things that you possibly could do if you prioritize them more. But if you're very self-serving and you're in trying to make sure you stay in office and you want to you want to make a career out of politics, what happens over time, and then what happens when you multiply that over several different representatives, political representatives, is you get kind of instantiated into our system cycles of professional politicians who don't do anything
Hmm.
for the people they're supposed to represent, and that doesn't serve
Yeah.
the people. So
Yeah, but
that's the systemic outcomes, the negative
uh-huh.
systemic outcomes of this practice is what I'm criticizing.
Okay. And you kind of see it a little more on the Democratic side than you do on the Republican
Mm-mm,
side.
I don't agree with
Even
that
though
either.
you
I think
still
you see it.
no, no, hold
I
on a
think you
second.
see it equally
In
on both
voting
sides.
patterns, you absolutely do see it in patterns. The uniformity of the vote in Congress in on the Democratic side is greater than the uniformity of the vote on the Republican side. That is undeniable. You can look at any bill that you want. I
I,
guarantee you, you
I'm
will
not.
see.
I'm not denying that. What I was
But
denying is the idea that you see more self-serving politicians
oh,
in the
no, that's
Democrat
not what I'm
Party than
talking
you
about.
see in the
That's
right.
not what I'm talking
You see
about.
in the Republican Party.
I I have no love for either one of them.
Okay.
My point is though, there are there are a certain subgroups of individuals within. It's a little bit rarer in the Democratic Party. There are some people that I have a bit of respect for, same
Mhm.
as with the Republican Party. But as far as like consistency, as far as like their messages and their morals, like the people that we look at least the ones I've seen cited the most often, and then tell me if I'm wrong, or if you have someone else in mind as being people serving and based on moral and social principles are guys like Bernie and women like AOC or some of the people in the squad or whatever, and that general vicinity, the younger ones and the more democratic socialist ones, they vote the same way the neoliberal war hawks do every time. Well, you're telling me that you are the people who care about human rights. You're the people who care about social cooperation and peace. Yet you fund wars in other countries consistently, and then you're completely quiet about it. Like that. I don't see any examples of what's it called, of people can being consistently themselves and following their own moral principles rather than going with rather than towing the party line. I'm not seeing it. If you have examples, I would love to know. I have a personal example, someone who I've respected for a very long time because of this, Ron Paul,
You want you
who
want
would
you want me to give
who
you
would
an
vote
example of a
by
morally consistent?
himself.
You want me to give you an example of a morally consistent Democrat?
I mean, or anybody else really, but out of the people that
That's a
that I
tall
can,
order right there. That's a
I
tall order.
but that's what I'm saying, dude. Like the election and the support of the rest of your party
But it's
matters
also
to
difficult
them
to give
more.
example. But it's also difficult to give examples of morally consistent Republicans too.
Absolutely, and that's why I told you, like, there are very very few people, and one of the rare ones on both sides is Ron Paul. He used to vote alone for like 20 years. He would oppose bills by himself. Like, I'm not talking about by himself on the Republican side, by himself. Period. Like, no one else would vote the way he does.
I mean, okay. I don't have I don't hold him in that high esteem. I do like him as a politician
I mean,
relative
that's not
to
even an
a lot of
esteem
other
thing.
ones.
It's like a factual thing. Like,
I'm just not
if
that
you
big
look
on
at,
Ron, but I do think he's more consistent in general than most politicians. But I haven't really done a deep dive in terms of the voting records of most of these politicians. So I will be speaking in ignorance right now, and I would just be pontificating, and I don't want to do that.
yeah,
But I think we've served this part, and we've actually kind of gotten off topic with the Twitter thing. But I want to tee you up for the second thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring up your second story and have you take it away with the summary.
perfect. This is actually kind of related to what we were just talking about. And here I'm bringing up a
Here we
oh, this
go.
guy, man. Oh my God. So Mark
Let's,
Zuckerberg was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he sort of gave a little breakdown, a synopsis as to what the Facebook policy was when it came to dealing with the Hunter Biden story right before the election back in November of 2020. Um, Actually, was it? Yeah, it was in November of 2020. And he talks about his visit, well, at least the FBI visiting his team, as he says, um, claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was actually Russian propaganda. It says here, the Facebook suppressed the post blockbuster revelation of Hunter Biden's infamous laptop in response to a vague FBI warning about possible Russian propaganda tied to the 2020 election, according to Hunter Mark Zuckerberg. Um, you know, and this is what he says. Basically, the background here is that the FBI, I think, basically, that's very strange. I think basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, "Hey, just so you like you should be on high alert." Um, and to me, what this says to me is two things. One, uh, the the people running this platform are very much either quite dishonest or are nowhere near politically aware enough to be making the sort of decisions that they're making. This claim of Russian propaganda um, that's still going on today since 2016. It's been 8 years with absolutely no evidence. Like, I don't even it makes me feel like I'm crazy. There is no evidence to be cited anywhere, only claims. And yet we continue down this path of assumption. As a matter of fact, before I even get there, we have evidence that it was faked. The person who submitted the Steele dossier, Michael Sussman, admitted to faking it. It's like, it doesn't get any better than that. Yet we're still here talking about Russian propaganda, and we're still sort of going down this path of what's it called? Assumption that it was only Russians that can affect elections, and that the politicization of like the FBI isn't something that's possible, and that's something we've talked about before as well. I think you've mentioned it before, how it drives you crazy that the left usually can't believe that the FBI possibly be corrupt, yet the police is, a den of demons. It's stupefying. Um, but yeah, I I want to know what you think about this.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to swap screens real quick, and then I'm going to put yours back up. So I have here in the most trusted website of all time, Wikipedia, evidence that you said doesn't exist. According to an analysis by BuzzFeed, the quote 20 top performing false election stories from hoax sites and hyperpartisan blogs generated 8,711,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. In September of 2017, Facebook told congressional investigators it had discovered that hundreds of fake accounts linked to a Russian troll farm had bought $100,000 in advertisements targeting the 2016 U.S. election audience. I want to emphasize that last sentence. In September of 2017, Facebook told congressional investigators it had discovered that hundreds of fake accounts, hundreds, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not even millions, hundreds of fake accounts linked to a Russian troll farm had bought $100,000 in advertisements targeting the 2016 U.S. election audience. The ads, which ran between June 2015 and May 2017, primarily focused on divisive social issues. Roughly 25% were geographically targeted. Facebook has also turned over information about the Russian-related ad buys to Special Counsel Robert Mueller. And we know how credible Mueller is. Approximately 3,000 adverts were involved. So 3,000 advertisements to put.
That's like a good afternoon.
That's
like a good afternoon. but
this is serious. This is serious. Let me finish. And these were viewed by between 4 or 5 million Facebook users. 4 or 5 million Facebook users saw this. There doesn't seem to be any indication about whether or not that swayed their votes. On November 1st, 2017, the House Intelligence Committee released a sample of Facebook ads and pages that had been financially linked to the Internet Research Agency. I'm almost done. A 2019 analysis of the Washington Post Outlook reviewed a number of troll accounts active in 2016 and 2018 and found that many resembled organic users. Rather than wholly negative and obvious, many confirmed troll accounts deployed humor. They deployed humor as a method to sway an election and were astute in exploiting questions of culture and identity and are frequently among the first to push new divisive conversations, even, quote, picked up by mainstream print media. So this is open and shut right there. There's all the evidence on Wikipedia. You cannot deny this. You cannot debunk this. You can try. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you're going to be able to do a good job.
Oh my God. This is damning evidence, of course. And again, 3,000 adverts. I mean, I could run more adverts by myself. I'm like,
okay, let me try to steelman it as you debunk it. So clearly advertisements can sway people's opinions because otherwise we wouldn't have the political ads. I'm so-and-so and I approve this message. We wouldn't have that during campaign season every year if they didn't work. Right. So clearly you can have an impact. Now, we live in a social media age. And so clearly having advertisements that are widely broadcastable via social media, the natural ways that things go viral, can have similar impacts in terms of swaying opinion. So I don't want to be too tongue in cheek and make it seem like it's totally ridiculous that 3,000 ads could have a significant impact on votes. However, just because you have 3,000 ads doesn't necessarily guarantee you're gonna sway votes in the way that you want to. Okay, so with that, I was being tongue in cheek before. I'm trying to be level headed now. What do you say to
that? First off, what are those ads on? And are these just opinions? And also, and from what I know, actually, and I've been exposed to that sort of argument before, a lot of those ads were targeting, or at least were discussing Clinton-related scandals, which we have no, like, we have absolutely no reason to doubt that it actually happened because we actually have evidence of it, and it's been investigated. Well, it's been looked at by the FBI with no charges and no consequences whatsoever. If that's if accurately, like, pushing the awareness of a real event is considered election interference, then I mean everything is election interference at that point. It's like that's such a low bar. It's absolutely insane. It's not like we're talking about people who are fabricating completely false stories about a candidate and doing so and disseminating it in en masse in that way. As far as
Okay.
like hundreds, like, dude, if we're talking about hundreds of accounts, like one guy can probably create like 30 of them. We're talking like maybe a team of 50 people, perhaps, in one place. And even if they're Russian, does it mean that they're Russian government related? It's like there are so many other leaps that are being made that I just don't see how you can blame the Russian state with such weak evidence.
Fair. Also, it's not clear to what extent that the content of those advertisements weren't saying true things that were scandalous about Hillary Clinton versus false things. I got to do my due diligence with Steel Manning, so here we go. I wouldn't deny that there were no false claims made about Hillary Clinton during that election. I think that there are false claims made by every major candidate, usually by the opposition, in order to smear them, in order to sway votes away from them every election. So it's not surprising to see false things. But here's maybe one example. This is a New York Post, or excuse me, Washington Post or article, my bad. Washington Post, WAPO. How the right embraced the false claim that Hillary Clinton spied on President Donald Trump. This was written February 18, 2022, 3 a.m. Eastern by Glenn Kessler. So this might be a candidate for a false claim made by Hillary Clinton, that Hillary Clinton herself spied on President Donald Trump. Like she was just sitting there with her binoculars looking in his window at Mar-a-Lago or some shit. I don't know how she would do that. So this is a fact checker, and we know how accurate those are from WAPO. On February 7th, former Trump administration aide Kash Patel aired on an interview with his former boss on Epic Times TV. Former President Donald Trump predicted that there would be a lot coming from special counsel John Durham, and that Durham would fully expose Democratic efforts to tie his campaign to Russia. All of these things they say about me and Russia, it was them in Russia, Trump said. It was them in Russia. They worked with Russia. That sounds like a Trump sentence. 4 days later, in a filing that appeared in an electronic federal court record shortly before midnight, Durham made new claims about the case that explored across right-leaning media during the weekend. Coincidentally or not, the filing highlighted something that Patel knew in great detail. February 2017 meeting between the CIA and former prosecutor Michael Sussman, who was in Durham's crosshairs. Patel in 2017 was a Republican Hill aide charged with investigating Russian interference in 2016. During 2017 interview with Sussman, Patel indicated that he knew about Sussman's meeting with the CIA and questioned him closely about it. Patel did not respond to a request for comment. Dun, dun, dun. The deep in the weeds connection between his 2017 inquiries and the Durham probe reflects the usual web of Durham-focused influencers that helped drive the narrative. The latest Durham filing was a monumental bombshell. So they're downplaying this bombshell from Durham now. This is fascinating to me. The group
Incredible.
includes anonymous Twitter accounts such as one called Technofog, conservative journalists, such reporters from the Epic Times, Red State and former administration officials such as Patel, Fox News, and Newsmax that led the charge on conservative television, often in misleading ways. Because the Durham filing was made late on Friday, the narrative pushed by this group was largely unchallenged over the weekend. Not until Monday did mainstream journalists begin to look into the filing, adding context and reporting, including responses from Sussman and other players supposedly implicated. The Sussman legal team accused Durham of making prejudicial and false allegations that are irrelevant to his motion and to the charged offense, and are plainly intended to politicize the case, inflame media coverage, and taint the jury pool. But by then, the horse was out of the barn. Dun, dun, dun. I love these articles. They're hilarious to me. I don't want to read too much because this is going to be kind of long. But the short of it is, this article smacks of downplaying what was presented by the right as a bombshell revelation that either Clinton herself or more likely affiliates associated with Clinton and Clinton's campaign spied on Trump and drummed up false stuff to paint him as some kind of like weird shill for Russia. And so they're downplaying something that actually, on second glance, actually seems to be way more plausible than they're pretending.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know that it's true. I want to be neutral somewhat because I genuinely don't know if it's true. But the idea that there was nothing false in that fucking Steele dossier, bro. That there was nothing fudged, that it was all the up and up, and that it's just undeniable and controversial proof, bro. At this point, it's just ridiculous. Like, anybody who still believes that shit is weird to me, including but not limited to, what's her name from MSNBC? What is her name? What is the famous lesbian anchor?
Rachel
freaking Maddow. Oh my god. But I want to hear what you have to say about this.
And I'm gonna share my screen really quick and talk a little bit about the Ukrainian interference, as a matter of fact, in that election.
The same Ukraine we gave billions of dollars to for no real reason. That Ukraine,
that one too. Mm-hmm,
that's probably just a coincidence, though. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what's it called? So here, this is an article that it's on Consortium News, but it actually came from the Gray Zone. It's actually a pretty good website for alternate views on geopolitics, for example. It says, I know I've written about this before, but I feel like I have to address it again, seeing how just about every impeachment witness has repeated the claim that meddling by Ukrainian government officials did not happen in 2016, and that anyone who says otherwise is spreading toxic Russian propaganda. I've been dipping into the hearings every now and again, and I've seen this said over and over. It reminds me of the new age quantum mind over matter types of The Secret. Repeat the mantra as often enough and convince yourself that it's true, and it is. So I'm not going to play that video here, but I do want to kind of highlight this article from Financial Times. So Sergei Lushenko, who actually went to jail in Ukraine and was convicted of deliberately interfering in U.S. Elections, as a matter of fact, for this. No one talks about that.
Because it's fake news.
It's fake news. He's probably not in jail either. He was,
you're fake news. You're fake news.
So it says here, but Mr. Lushenko and other political actors in Kiev say they will continue their efforts to prevent a candidate who recently suggested Russia might keep Crimea, which is annexed 2 years ago, from reaching the summit of American political power. And what happened in this case here was that they released, just another little example here. They released documents, like financial records of Paul Manafort's, essentially receiving payments from former President Viktor Yanukovych, who was dubbed a pro-Russian, which I don't think that label is quite accurate, as a matter of fact. But Paul Manafort had been working in Ukraine for years before he became President Trump's campaign manager. Right. But the release of that information was supposed to sway some sort of, at least taint his campaign and his team with some sort of Russian-tied, payment scheme, some sort of corruption. It didn't quite work out for Hillary Clinton, but these actions were seen as deliberate and for the sole objective of actually hurting Trump's chances of winning in the 2016 election. And this is something that Ukrainian courts themselves were found that there was enough evidence to convict this man. As a matter of fact, I believe the president at the time, Petro Poroshenko, was also involved. But he managed to skate out by completely throwing what's his name, Lyshenko under the bus.
Okay.
So why this is not bigger news? Who knows?
Well, maybe
You
it's
know.
because it's false. Maybe, I don't know. I done that.
I hear Lyshenko was spotted at a spa a few
I heard
days
he was
later.
spotted at a Proud
Reportedly.
Boys rally. That's what I heard. He's a
Yo,
white
that's crazy.
supremacist. He's a white supremacist.
But it is an interesting article. If anyone wants to check it out, it's on Consortium News. It says yes, the Ukraine meddled in the 2016 U.S. elections.
Ukraine would never. Okay. You sound. Oh God, you're such a bigot. I can't stand you sometimes.
I know, dude.
So I'm gonna show you our first chat because I accidentally went live.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So that was awkward. Can you see the chat?
I can, yeah.
Okay. So let me go ahead and show our first chat right here. It says Trump is awful, tough. To which I responded,
no.
He is pretty bad. I can't lie. And the person who did this is named Cream Pie Lars.
Yeah.
So this might be just a troll. I just wanted to show it just because, first of all, I didn't intend to go live. But secondly, since I went live, I didn't expect there, even if I went live, to be anybody who would be paying attention because I don't have like a following or anything. But some random, I guess I assume troll decided to just like diss Trump. Like that hurts my feelings. I'm like, bro, I'm not that big of a Trump fan.
Yeah,
now, I did vote for Trump in 2020, but I didn't vote for him because I'm like all pro MAGA. I love Trump. I voted for him because it was the biggest middle finger I could give to the left because the left seems to have lost their goddamn minds. That's why. It's the first time I've ever in my life voted for a Republican for anything. But I like to just drop that in there, like, yeah, I voted for Trump, and motherfuckers look at me like, oh, like, and I love that shit. It's hilarious to me. It's like, bro, like, when did we get to the point where voting for a Republican made you evil? Like, Trump's not a Saturday morning cartoon villain. Now, he's not the best politician ever, for sure. I think I would even say there are a lot of Republicans better than Trump. Also, I voted for him in California. There was no way Trump was going to win California, so the vote didn't matter anyway. I was this close to voting for Kanye West. I was really going to vote for Kanye. I was going to vote for Yeezus. I was like, save us, Yeezus. Save us.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I just, the idea that, and I live in Wokeville, USA. I live in San Francisco. So voting for Republican is so taboo here that it's laughable. Like the kind, like the way people regard you as like a leper if you show any kind of sympathy towards. Yeah, I'm dead ass. Like if you show any kind of sympathy, you are treated worse if you voted Republican than if you actually have monkeypox. Wow. in a place like this, I swear to God, like it's crazy, bro. It's crazy, and like I actually tend to vote Democrat. And I actually want to vote for Democrats again. I just want them to stop being like woke-tarded. That's all I want. Like I want them to be more sensible and less radical in their policy positions. And in their willingness to virtue signal. With that, I'm gonna go. We have a little bit of time left for our last two stories.
Gotcha. Oh,
so we're gonna shotgun those.
Cool.
We be talking. We got a lot of filler, but it's cool.
And it's your go, right?
Yep. So I'm going to pull up the Political article. This is all about Biden's student debt plan. There's been a little bit of a political backlash about it. Now, this one focuses on centrists. You can see it in the headline. It says the centrist revolt against Biden's student debt plan. I thought it was an interesting angle because typically everything is blamed on the left or the right. If you're on the right, everything's blamed on the left. You're on the left, everything's blamed on the right. But this, so I consider Political pretty left-leaning. To blame centrists is interesting. And I'm wondering how much of a norm it's going to be to blame centrists, to start blaming, for the left in particular, to start blaming centrists for things. Because for the longest time, I was told that there were no real centrists, that centrists are they're just Republicans who are hiding the fact Like you can't
you
be a
got found
centrist
out,
in this
bro.
country. You're really just a closeted conservative.
I mean,
It's like,
you
but
voted
nah,
for
some
Trump,
of us
bro.
are in the middle. Some of us exist, bro. Like some of us genuinely disagree with woke shit. But here we go.
Yeah, I don't want
So
to hear that. You voted for Trump.
yeah,
Yeah, you're listen.
I
You've been
voted.
found
Yeah,
out.
yeah. I've been. Yeah, but I don't. Well, the thing is, I don't hide that. I'm not ashamed of that. Like I don't care. Like you can judge me if you want to, but like what? I'm over here live telling people, and I've been telling people on Clubhouse too. It's like whatever.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that was fast. Democratic moderates and progressives. So now we're talking about Democratic moderates and progressives. So those are the interests that they have in mind. Spent a year and a half feuding over Biden of the Biden agenda. The Inflation Reduction Act finally brought them together, but President Joe Biden's long-awaited plan to cancel some student debt, one of the most contentious issues dividing Democrats, has reignited the intra-party policy wars. Biden's announcement yesterday was an enormous achievement for the left. Activists turned a once fringe idea into a litmus test for a Democratic president who, until recently, was still voicing hostility to student debt forgiveness in internal White House debates. While they didn't get everything they wanted, the debt relief campaign offers a model to be studied by any progressive reform movement. I love the fluff that they with which they like. Anyway, they give these flowery languages to things that are obviously stupid, but they didn't change everyone's mind. Centrists who thought Biden was their ally on this issue feel burned, and in expressing their disappointment, they are reciting several of the same arguments that the president himself previously expressed. Let's dig into what Biden said yesterday and what it means legally, economically, and politically. The details. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs and I'm going to summarize the rest. All right. Politico's Michael Stafford and Eugene Daniels. Quote, the Biden administration on Wednesday announced it was canceling up to $10,000 of student debt for millions of people and up to $20,000 of debt for low and middle income borrowers who previously received a Pell Grant. Part of the qualification for receiving a Pell Grant is that you're low income, so that's why the Pell Grant matters. The loan relief will be limited to borrowers who earn less than $125K a year or families earning less than $250K a year. In addition, the White House plans to extend the moratorium on monthly payments and interest for a final time through December 31st. So it's means tested, which a lot of woke people don't like, apparently. The president said 43 million people would benefit from a student loan plan, with 20 million Americans having their student loans fully wiped out. Now, to summarize it, the student debt forgiveness thing is not wiping out student debt for like everybody or like all black people or anything like that. It's wiping out just $10,000 of your debt for people who make less than 125K a year or families that make less than 250K a year, and then 20K for people who were eligible for the Pell Grant. So it's means tested. Now the uber woke progressives wanted to have debt forgiveness for, I guess, all poor people, and they never really defined it, but maybe some amongst them did define it. Maybe everybody making less than 125K would have gotten all of their debt cleared. Maybe all black people. I don't know. I don't know exactly what because they're not really big on details, but it's just like this entitlement. But this is kind of like a step in that direction, and there's a lot of criticism being levied against this. From the left, there's a lot of people who think it didn't go far enough, obviously, because they wanted more. From the right, there are people who think it went way too far. They're in principle against the idea that you can like take out a loan and then like just have the government be like, well, never mind that contract, you're good. I'm a little bit in the middle. I'm more nuanced about it. I do think that a lot of these loans are predatory, and to the extent that they're predatory, I do think that they should be pathways for some kind of loan forgiveness or something like that, where a person has to pay back maybe a portion or maybe just the principal even, but not necessarily all of the interest. If we can bail out big banks and we can allow corporations that were terrible to file bankruptcy and not have to pay back all of their debt, we can do this for students. I don't mind that, especially given kind of the economics of universities and how they're overpriced anyway. So I'm more in the middle. You probably might disagree with me on that, but wiping out all student debt just willy-nilly, just nobody has to pay. does bring up some interesting moral conundrums, because you do have people who weren't as responsible with their funds as they could have been, and now they're benefiting from their negligence in managing their money, while other people who were responsible and saved their money and didn't go out buying a whole bunch of things that they don't need, who paid back their loans as responsible individuals, they get screwed because they don't get any loan forgiveness. This was actually brought up to Elizabeth Warren in that kind of now viral clip where this guy asked Elizabeth Warren about that. So that's kind of summing it up. I actually am leaning slightly in favor of those typically right of center who criticize this, but I'm not opposed in principle to some kind of debt forgiveness plan. I would have more questions around why they set the bar at 125K and 250K, and I will be interested or curious to know whether or not Democrats are genuinely trying to bribe people for votes, because that is a narrative that seems to have more plausibility with policy positions like this. What do you think?
I think that is definitely one of the main reasons for this. I don't see any real sort of pragmatic, at least objective in doing this specifically. And actually, I don't disagree with you as much as you think, as far as the the predatory nature of the education system. I don't think it's just the loans. I think it's the actual education system, because the fact that you cannot go bankrupt and drop those loans is, I think, to me, is egregious and inconsistent, extremely arbitrary. Um, and like you said, if corporations are able to get these sorts of things, which they shouldn't be able to, I don't think either of these things should be happening. Then I don't see the reasoning behind not being able to bankrupt your way out of that sort of debt, which is really the point of bankruptcy. But as far as forgiving $10,000, I mean, to be fair, that money has already been spent. And like I talked about before, the amount of money that's being spent by the federal government, and it's been this way for decades. There are very few presidencies which have been able to actually curtail that deficit. Reagan being one of them. I believe Clinton did. So I'm not entirely sure on that one, actually, but definitely Reagan for sure. And we spend more money than we take in taxes every single year. So what this means is that not only are people who are very, like, 2/3 of the country who's never gone to college, who doesn't have the economic disposition that the demographic that goes to college actually already has. Like, we're talking about like the top 25% of earners, like top 25% of income of the income class goes to college. I think they make up like half or more of the college population. So these are people who are already, economically more advantaged, but those taxes are being levied on people who will never go to college to pay for these things. And on top of this, your currency is being devalued because of the exorbitant amount of spending, which is fueling the continued rise in tuition. We didn't have you can look at this. You can look at the price of tuition, and you can superimpose the dates, the time when we actually introduced these federally subsidized loans. It's on par. The very reason why tuition has gotten so expensive in this country is because the federal government is willing to pay out whatever the schools are collectively charging for it. That's just what it is. There's
Well,
no other real explanation as far as like rise in costs of educating kids,
yeah.
or having to build more facilities, whatever it may be. There is absolutely no other factor there that you could actually use to
Well,
justify such a like parabolic rise in
well,
tuition.
I don't know if that's true, because according to modern monetary theory, the government can just spend, 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 and there's no negative consequences.
Well,
And
modern monetary theory is not a theory, nor is it modern.
it is very modern. It's one of the
No, it's not.
wokest, most modernist theories I've ever heard.
It's not.
It just
These
blatantly
people.
disregards basic fundamental facts about economics, and that's awesome and progressive. But also, it is definitely a theory, though. What? How is it not a
Uh,
theory?
It's not a theory because it's really just a
how can
justification.
there be a theory that lizard people are drinking the blood of babies, but there can't be a theory that the government can just spin endlessly with no consequences?
Because when we're talking about a theory as far as like lizard people, we're talking about the pejorative conspiracy theory, which is actually
If you
a
can have a
term.
conspiracy theory,
No,
why
no,
can't
no.
you have an economic theory?
But the term is not a scientific one. The term being put on modern monetary theory is actually an assumption that this is a scientific basis. It's a scientifically valid theory, like economic sciences. And one of the biggest what's it called? One of the biggest what's it called facets of a scientific theory is the fact that it might be falsifiable, and there is nothing you will get these people to say that will falsify um, the fact that printing exorbitant amounts of money, that not just money, currency actually, and that currency, that money actually only comes from a government, and that full employment is the desirable state of the economy, of like the workforce participation in an economy.
Uh,
These are just faith claims. There are no falsifiable claims that they're making, and then they're basing their entire monetary system on that. So no, it doesn't pass the litmus test for being a theory.
they're not faith claims.
Those are faith claims.
Nah, you can take those claims to the bank, pun intended. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to highlight before we move on to your second and I guess last story for time is this. So apparently, Democrats in tough races are trying to distance themselves from the student loans decision. Um, and then there's a subheadline here from NBC News: Republicans are betting that there will be a backlash against debt forgiveness in states or districts where college attainment is low. I love this headline, this subheadline here, because it puts all of the emphasis on what Republicans are betting,
Hmm.
when what they really should be saying is there very likely will be a backlash against student for debt forgiveness in states or districts where college attainment is low. That's what they should say. But they're putting all of it on Republicans, and I just like when left-leaning sources do that. It's hilarious the way they frame things. Um, Shout out to Tim Pool. Tim Pool has opened my eyes about the ways with which the news media does manipulative framing tactics to make it seem as though to draw your attention in kind of subtle ways to what they think you should be focused on, which is that it's the no good, evil, very bad Republicans' opinion on this that you should be, as opposed to what the objective reality is. So Cleveland. So when President Joe Biden announced student loan debt relief this week, his allies celebrated, but a string of Democrats in tight races across the country want little to do with it. That's because the president may have just handed Republicans a new line of attack at a moment when Democrats are strengthening their positions in swing states, and signs are emerging that the party could stave off what was to have been a GOP sweep in the midterm elections. Campaign officials, party members, pollsters, and national strategists in both parties say. Republicans are betting that there will be a backlash against debt forgiveness in states and districts where college attainment is low. That includes Nevada, where Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto faces one of the toughest contests in the country, and the state is second to last in the country for residents with 4-year degrees. And Mike Noble, who has conducted extensive independent polling in Nevada and Arizona, among other states, said the timing of Biden's announcement was a head scratcher. Given that Democrats were just hitting their stride, gas prices are coming down, the Republican Party is increasingly divided, Donald Trump is dominating the headlines again, and abortion rights are fueling fundraising and party enthusiasm. Quote, it doesn't make strategic sense. They were in good position. All the momentum was going in their favor. End quote. I love that quote so much because the basic assumption of that quote is that Democrats normally operate in the most competent ways in the first place.
Hmm.
When it comes to political strategy, I think that they're flailing, but that's just me. I'm not an expert on political strategy. Noble said that Democrats. Noble said of the Democrats. Noble said debt forgiveness tends to be most popular with younger voters, while a far older electorate votes most consistently in midterm elections. So why forgive debt on a group that never turns out to vote in the first place? The people who vote are the ones who paid their loans back or never had loans to begin with. That's a great question, actually. So I'm gonna read the last paragraph, then we'll get your take. Biden took executive action Wednesday to forgive up to $10,000 in debt for individual federal loan borrowers who make less than $150K a year, and up to $20,000 for recipients of Pell Grants. So we know all that already. So there seems to be at least potential, predictable fallout from this policy position, and the timing of it seems bad, particularly in places like Nevada and Arizona, which are really, really going to look shaping up to be tightly contested for the midterms. What is your take on all of the debt forgiveness stuff generally as it relates to the potential negative fallout for political races in the midterms?
It seems to me like you said, actually, I think you are correct about the fact that this is a bit of flailing going on, especially around the coverage. I do believe that he is trying to use this as an issue that might rally some of the younger voters, which have turned on him, which we've seen. His approval rating amongst the young Democrats is dismal. It's really, really bad. It's actually, it's like in the low 20s or something like that. It's like it's terrible. It might be lower than that now. But this
all he
is
has
an
to do is
issue.
give them handouts to compensate for that.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that he ran on. If you remember, he's just he talked about debt loan. What's it called? Loan forgiveness for college students, and even floating the idea that college might actually become free, like
There
entirely, well, at
are
least
there
community
are
college.
there are a lot of promises he made on the campaign trail that he never
Of
delivered on.
course, of course, but this seems
Why
to
does
me.
everybody forget the whole minimum wage? $15 minimum wage.
Oh my
Does
god!
nobody remember that? He was
I mean,
supposed to be
look.
the moderate guy. He was supposed to be the unifier in chief. Remember the unifier in chief?
Oh,
But
I
to be
can't. I
fair,
just.
Trump made a lot of promises he didn't keep either. He was going
Of
to build
course.
a wall and make Mexico pay for it and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
So,
actually, Biden is actually gonna keep Trump's promise on that.
no, not according to Jean Pierre, the new the Jen
Yeah,
Psaki replacement.
dude, I don't.
She
Whatever she says, believe the opposite. Essentially,
she's
it's
gold.
insane.
I love watching her
It's absolutely
interact
insane.
with Peter Ducey.
Oh my god, Ducey is like.
I love watching her interact with Peter Ducey. Peter, you
Oh
can just
my
see
god.
the white supremacism dripping off of Peter Ducey's lips, and she handles it with such grace. I love her so much. She is the first gay black woman in her position,
Oh
and
my
everyone
goodness.
should know all the glass ceilings that she breaks on a daily basis.
But I think there's an important point here. I think again, it's not something that's going to matter to the left. It's not something that's going to really make news at all, except for like right wing circles. But the legislation that Biden is actually piggybacking on in order to justify this, what's it called? This executive order. Apparently, this was a law passed after 9/11 in order to give back, to forgive debt for families of veterans and for
Uh-huh.
veterans themselves.
Yeah.
And essentially, they're piggybacking on that legislation in order to legally justify being able to forgive this debt, despite the fact that Nancy Pelosi quite accurately pointed this out at the
Yeah.
beginning of his presidency that only an act by Congress could forgive loan debt, and the president himself doesn't have the authority to do so. Um, that
Nancy
this is
Pelosi would never contradict the president of the United States
she would never.
unless that president was named Donald Trump.
She's one of those morally consistent Democrats we were talking
Of
about.
course she is. Of course she is. Of course she is. I would love to get some insider training. I mean, insight on stock trading from her. um, let me ask you this though. Well, actually, no. You know what? Wait for time. Let's move on to your last story. Are you ready
Okay.
to go with that? If not, I can fill.
Yeah, you can
All right.
go ahead and get the last one in.
All right, cool. So so I actually I'm curious to know what you think about this. So like when it comes to the legality of the executive order, rumor has it that this is it's possible. It's possible. It's within the realm of possibility this could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. According to the wisdom of the woke, the Supreme Court is rogue. because it is stacked with radical Republicans.
Oh,
So it's likely not going to be upheld in the Supreme Court if it goes to the Supreme Court. But by the time that happens, people will already have had their debts forgiven, and I don't know how you unforgive debt. So, like, what would be the potential fallout of that politically for the Democrats, in your opinion? That's a question I actually
oh,
don't know the answer to.
of having the actual legislation struck down by.
Yeah,
So first, I would have to know how long this, what sort of time period we're looking at here. Is this something that's ongoing? Do you know actually?
I don't. So I would imagine that this would probably be going up to the Supreme Court within the next 7, 8, 9 months. But I don't really
Oh no,
have.
I mean the period in which the was oh, actually I think I read about this. I think you have to sign up for it before the end of September. I believe. I think that's the
Well,
deadline for
my
this.
my point is, whatever the time frame is, I'm pretty certain that you would be able to access whatever this law enables well before it gets to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
that's
just
but
what I'm
that's
saying.
what I meant. What's it called? That was the whole thing. If I think there would be a lot more of a fallout if this was an ongoing thing, and the Supreme Court came along and just deaded it. But it seems like this is already a very divisive issue. Seems like in the Democratic Party right now, as far as like the
Uh-huh.
centrist versus the far left.
Right.
Um, I think right now, either way it goes, he's gonna lose. What's it called? Support from his party. The people that are on the left don't think it's enough.
Yeah.
They'll cry about it. They'll cry about it for sure.
Don't do that.
The-
Don't do that. Don't talk about the leftists like that. I won't allow it.
Your
I won't
people.
allow it. I won't allow it. Well,
No,
they don't
but
like me too much right now, but
yeah, yeah,
I will protect them anyway. All right.
yeah, but they don't think it's enough anyway. So this is not something. This is not a hill they'll die on. But they'll definitely use it as cannon fodder for just pelting the Supreme Court as they usually do. Even though the Supreme Court has been the sole tool of change that the progressive movement has had in the last 60 years. Like
Mhm.
they don't actually change what's it called legislation or affect federal law or state law very well unless
Mhm.
it's done through the Supreme Court.
Right, right, right.
That's just the way it's been. Um, and it's just so weird to me when they pelt the Supreme Court like that or try to act like we should ban it or something when it would actually hurt you more. Um, but yeah, I don't see it being really that big of a deal, to be honest with you. Just because so many people even within his party are not okay with the way it's been done.
Fair enough.
And I don't know how they would unforgive uh
Forgiven
loans that
loans.
were already forgiven, because like
I
it's once
forgive
it's
you.
been signed.
Psych.
Yes, like, 'cause, like once
Psych.
you sign paperwork and acknowledging that this has been voided, there's no going back on that. I mean, unless, and I don't, we live in wild
Remember that
times.
$10,000 we said you didn't know? Well,
The Supreme Court said that was a
actually, according to the Supreme Court,
lie. We was lying,
yeah,
but
our
again,
bad. Like our
that would
effort.
actually be a real rallying call. I think if that were to happen,
For the
that would be
Democrats.
for the Democrats. They would definitely be quite
I thought that
happy
was
to see that.
I thought that's what the overturning of Roe v. Wade is supposed to be.
Yeah, well, listen, they found out that turns out it doesn't like affect everyone. So the people that were protesting in San Francisco, they're back to their regular lives. They
Don't
forgot
single
about
out
it.
the city I live in right now. Don't do that.
Yeah, man. I'm just saying. But
Don't do
even in
that.
New York, bro.
Yeah,
Even in New York, in
exactly,
other
exactly.
yeah,
They were
yeah, listen,
protesting in New
listen.
York too. Don't do that. Don't try to play me.
Listen. Um, honestly, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, because I think some of them are starting to realize also that that can't be done by Congress anyway. Even though they would love for it to happen, I think they even know that that's kind of a long shot, because otherwise it would have happened by now. Congress simply doesn't have the authority to pass laws that are federally sweeping in that way.
What? Yes, they do. That's literally their job. Congress
That
passes laws.
is that is.
They're the
Wait, what?
legislative branch of government. They're supposed to
Yeah,
pass laws. What do you mean?
there are limitations set by the 10th Amendment,
True, there are limitations, but
but this falls under.
that was a very poorly worded sentence. That it is literally Congress's the whole purpose of their existence is to pass laws.
No, I understand that, but and so that they actually do not contradict the Constitution. If this is
Yeah,
something
okay,
that,
they have to be
if this is
constitutional.
something,
Yeah, that's
of
true.
course, but you see people like Nancy Pelosi, who was asked at a press conference after a Congress session, a congressional session. She was asked, "Hey, is this bill constitutional?" She's like, "Of course it's constitutional. We passed it." Like, do, are you serious? Like that's the criteria that you think that's what
This
like
okay.
that's a real problem. I don't think people realize
Far
how
be it
bad
from me
that
to
is.
defend Nancy Pelosi, but
But
what she
but
could have
dude,
meant by that, is like this. We do this for real. This is our job. Of course, we would have taken into
that's not what she
consideration the
meant, bro.
constitutionality of it. So yeah, we did it. So yeah, of course it's constitutional. That's
Mm,
one reading of what she said.
Oh my
That's one
god,
reading.
that
That's
is
one
an
reading. It's consistent with
extremely
what she said.
generous. That is an extremely
I'm a very
generous.
generous guy. I mean,
I guess so, but to the point where oh my god,
I'm a generous guy. I don't know what can I say. I don't know.
you,
All right. Are you ready to read your last story?
yeah, I
All
have
right,
it pulled up here.
all right.
I
I'm
got
gonna
a
go ahead and
spicy
share
one
it.
today.
All right, here we go.
So this is a story from the Daily Skeptic.
Oh, you about to
And
have me? Oh, dude, you about to? Okay, go ahead. Let's go.
yeah,
You had to bring up the climate, didn't you?
yes, I did.
All
And
right, here we
honestly,
go.
I'm not even trying to have a whole climate debate, but this
Yes,
is
you are.
something that
That's
no, I'm
exactly what you're
not.
trying to do.
I'm
That's
not.
exactly what you're trying
Come
to do,
on,
bro.
I'm a nice guy. Come on,
So,
bro.
I don't know, bro. I don't know.
So, declaration saying there is no climate emergency trends on Twitter. Greenies have a meltdown. So in the picture here, this is Dr. Nut Lusht. He's a studied crystallography, chemistry, physics, mathematics, and computer science professor. In the course of the long career, he founded. In the course of his, I'm sorry, in the course of a long career, he founded an IT company, and is an honorary professor at the University of Technology, Economics, and Culture at Leipzig. I'm not entirely sure what that is. That's probably Switzerland. I gotta check that, or maybe Germany.
Mhm.
As part of his work at the university, he deals with the energy industry, and climate change. He served the German Bundestag, which is their state assembly, as an expert in artificial intelligence. But Professor Loesch, very annoyed, as he demonstrated in a recent Facebook post.
Right.
He says, "I'm sick, or to put it even more clearly, I'm fed up with permanent and increasingly religious climate ramblings, fantasies about the energy transition, worship of electric cars, horror stories, and doomsday scenarios from Corona to uh, confl- conflagration, conflagrations, conflagrations, and weather disasters. I can't stand people who shout into microphones and cameras or printed in newspapers every day, and I suffer from having to see how science has turned into a horror of politics." These are strong words, and the declaration in itself that he is a part of the World Climate Declaration is a document put together by over 1,100 scientists and professionals. And the head of this committee is Norwegian physics Nobel Prize laureate Professor Ivar Javer. Um, and their basic contention here is that there is no such thing as a climate emergency as is being portrayed by the likes of the Intergovernmental Climate Change panel, I believe the ICPP of the UN, among other scientific organizations that have been decrying the essentially the impending doom of the planet since the 60s. It's been taking a while. I think climate change it'll come around, any day now. But
Wait,
essentially,
what?
what it'll come
You
around
about
to
to?
any day now. The sea levels and the droughts and the forest fires that are killing everyone. It'll come along, I'm sure.
Agreed.
So Professor Hermann Hard, which is he was a German scientist who recently retired, as a matter of fact, is one of those guys who has been very vocal over the last couple of years about carbon dioxide emissions and their role in changing the actual temperature of the planet. And as he says, the idea that humans control the climate via carbon dioxide emissions is an absolute delusion. And his general claim is the fact that what's it called?
Sorry,
Only about 15%.
humans control. Did you use the word control?
He says, well, that's not his quote. I can go
No, I
into
just
his
want to know
direct
if
quote,
that's
but
the word you said, because I'm about to push back in a very sincere way, not just devil's
that's what it
advocate.
says in the article.
All right.
Recently dismissed the idea that humans control the climate via carbon dioxide emissions as an absolute delusion. Uh,
Okay. Right.
yeah, and he talks about the fact that the only about like 15% of all carbon emissions are anthropogenic, meaning
Mhm.
that they are caused by human beings. Um, and you
How
know,
could
as
how could any emissions that come from automobiles not be human caused?
that's the, who said that?
Like that's not a natural. So then restate the statement you just said, because maybe I misunderstood it.
So
Oh, there's only a certain
he's
percentage
saying
of
of
emissions that come
carbon
from
emissions
cars.
that come
Oh,
from human
carbon
beings.
emissions. Okay, okay,
Carbon,
okay,
no, not car emissions. Carbon.
okay, okay.
I
You
may
got
have
that.
misspoke, I guess.
No, no, I think I may
Uh,
have just misheard you. I
oh,
apologize.
okay, okay, gotcha. And yeah, so this is something that the article goes on to talk about the sort of um, the economic sort of ramifications of these policies, because we're only really seeing them in the countries that have been the foremost investors in renewable energy, being Germany and Western Europe. Two examples of what's it called of such rises in energy costs because of the folly, in my opinion, that this is my opinion, the folly
Mhm.
of assuming that you can actually replace oil and natural gas with renewable energy. I think that's absolutely insane if you actually understand um, the not only the versatility but the energy density of these sources. So the megawatt hour cost in Germany right now is 563 euros. Last year, it was 23 euros. That is a staggering increase. And
Uh,
another example that
Wait,
the article
who are you blaming for this increase? You're blaming the climate people for this?
no, I'm blaming the German government and their influence, and the Green Party, I believe, is headed is actually in the majority in their parliament at the moment.
All right, I got a lot of
Um,
pushback, but I want to ask as politely as I know how for you to wrap it up so I can start getting
Yeah,
into it.
but this is my last point. And the UK, in the UK, it says here in the UK, this the spike in international gas prices and an increasing reliance on unreliable renewables means the consumer price cap could be raised to £6,000, an amount that is almost certainly beyond the means of a significant portion of the population. Under these conditions, a cold winter could kill thousands of people. But yeah, go ahead. You had some pushbacks there.
Some, yeah, I disagree with almost everything you just said. So first, so let me ask you this: do you believe that global climate change is actually happening? Yes or
Uh,
no?
I think the climate is something that wouldn't be to assume that it's static is insane. That's not
Okay,
the contention here.
that's we okay. So we agree that the climate changes kind of naturally. But what I'm asking specifically is, do you believe that as a result of a bunch of activity that human beings are doing, that we are having dramatic impacts on the climate in ways that are, in some sense, unnatural, in the sense that, but for the activities of of us as human beings, they would not have occurred.
Uh, I don't think so, but I also want to push on the sense that it's unnatural, because that's kind of like calling an anthill unnatural. Other
Well, it's
things,
unnatural only in
unlike us,
it's unnatural in
just
the
like
sense.
us, affect and
Fair enough,
interact with
but
their environment.
fair enough. What I mean it is as a contrast. So we typically use it colloquially as a contrast natural is a contrast to basically artificial, and by that we usually mean man-made. So we for whatever reason, better or worse, we put a premium on the things that human beings can impact, because we have a capacity fairly unique amongst all of the creatures on this planet to direct our intentions in ways that a lot of other non-human animals can't, and we can do things like create entire industries and economies and manufacture things by the millions, if not billions, etc.
which
So
just which has transformed our survivability and actually extended our
yeah, there are
lifetime
a lot of there are a lot of
by
benefits to it,
multiple
but there
times,
are,
of course.
yeah, there are a lot of benefits to it, but there are also a lot of drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks is the impact that we're having on our natural environment, that is, i.e., the planet, and part of that is the climate. So what I'm asking you is, do you affirm the idea that human beings and our ability to create entire industries that produce copious amounts of carbon emissions every year and have been doing so for decades, that we have the ability to impact the climate in the way that climate scientists say that we do?
In the
Yes or
way
no?
that they say that we do, which is
Yeah.
in a catastrophic way, absolutely not.
Yeah. So human beings cannot possibly cause
I
catastrophes with respect to the climate as a result of things like
but
heightening the amount of carbon emissions every
But
year.
remember, you're not using precise language when you're describing the actual impact, and when you're talking about what a catastrophe means. And
Well,
I'm
I'm speaking
talking about
broadly right
the
now. I
Yeah,
wasn't
sure.
trying to be specific
But I
about
think
that question.
no, but I think it's actually very important if I'm going to say that I
It
support this
feels
or I
like you're
don't
dodging
support
my
this.
question.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to actually, as a matter of fact, I'm trying to put more detail in your question so that we know exactly what I'm claiming is true or not.
Okay, but I'm actually asking you a broader question. I'm genuinely trying to assess what it is that you
Because
believe is possible and is not possible with respect to human beings' ability to impact the climate. That's what I'm trying
because
to assess.
Yeah. So the very idea that we impact the climate or that we impact the earth in itself is not something that I don't think anyone, even people who deny, as I do, the catastrophic predictions that most pro climate scientists are
Okay,
purporting.
okay,
The
I hear
whole
you.
point
I
is,
hear
the
you.
whole
You
point
you
is
think we
like,
can impact the climate, but what I'm asking now, more specifically,
no, no, we
a
can
little bit more
impact the
specific.
environment specifically.
Okay,
Like
fine.
that,
Okay,
that's a
fine.
given. Everything does.
But the climate's a part of the environment. But okay, fine. But you're admitting we can impact it. Now, what I want to know is, do you think that we can impact it in catastrophic ways?
No, I don't believe so. And I don't think there's enough evidence to even say that.
Uh, okay, so I'm gonna give you some evidence.
Absolutely,
I'm just
sure.
I'm just flabbergasted by this,
And I
and
have some
I
evidence of
hate
my
that
own,
you
as a
waited
matter of
to the
fact.
end of this to do this, because now you're gonna now you see, because now like
but
I don't feel like I have enough time to
but
really like.
hold on. And this is the thing. This was not why I brought up the article in the first place.
Yes, it is. This is what you
No,
wanted.
it's not.
You
No, it's
got
not.
what you wanted, bro.
No, 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 no,
You
no.
got what you
It's
wanted.
actually not.
You
And
make
I'm
it
gonna
quick, because
explain.
I'm about to go in,
I'm
bro.
gonna
Go
explain
ahead.
to you
Go
real
ahead.
quick why I brought it up. Actually,
All right.
the reason why I brought it up is actually more so due to like the economic and like human impact it'll have in the short term. We're talking about not only stifling of like the development of economies that are underdeveloped in Africa and in Asia and things like that, by keeping them from utilizing the very tools that are the causation of development, like
Mm,
what we call development in this country and in other developed nations. We
mm.
don't get that from using renewable energy. It's not possible. It just isn't. One, you're keeping a
I'm not
certain
even
subset.
I'm not
Well,
even
no,
there
you're
yet,
keeping
dude.
a
I'm
certain.
just trying to get
No,
there.
I know, but I'm trying to tell you like why I brought this up. You're keeping a certain subset of the world's population impoverished and actually keeping their what's it called, their life expectancy and their survivability lower than ours, just by like there's a lot more to this. There's like economic sort of incentives for certain governments that invest in renewable energies instead of fossil fuels, but also it's short-sighted in the fact that even the developed nations that are participating in this are seeing like catastrophic rises in their energy costs, and it's self-imposed, and we're doing it for for the really for the reason, the only reason being that there are many faith claims being put out as to the near consequences of climate change, or at least maybe in 100 years or whatever, when we're not actually considering the consequences of people living today. And you may disagree with me, but people living today supersede people who might live 100 years from now
Why?
because they're alive right now.
That's okay. That's a very
So,
poor argument.
no,
So
I'm sorry. You have, do you have some sort of moral principle that dictates like the rights of people who aren't even alive yet?
yeah, I think that they should be equal. So for the very same
Okay.
reason that
Equal to
you
but we're talking about a
so
hypothetical person here.
let me establish the principle. For the very same reason that people who tend to be right of center, I would assume you'd be a part of that, care about the unborn before they're born and before they're in existence, right? Is the very reason that we should extend that to
No, but
people
they
who
are in
aren't here yet.
existence, but they're not born yet. That's
They're
not the
not
same
okay.
thing.
Okay, no, okay, fair enough. Like, so when they're in utero, there's an existence there. I'm not denying the ontology
Okay.
of unborn fetuses, but what I'm saying is, even like the principle extends even beyond the point of like before they're even conceived. Like the in principle, you wouldn't want to do anything that would negatively impact the ability, let's say, for a person who wants to conceive a child, even before they've had sex, to do so, right? Because there's some kind of implicit respect for them. Also, in the way that we respect like the will and testament of people long since dead, even, right, is a manifestation of this principle, but in reverse into the past, right? So there's all kinds of examples that I could cite where we take into account the respect that we take ourselves to owe human beings.
No,
And
but what is the working
all I'm
principle?
advocating is that we would extend that into the future. Like, so one basic manifestation or demonstration of this kind of principle is we would not want to do anything with respect to the environment which would make it impossible for future generations to survive. That would be something that I think would be obviously moral, would it not?
Okay, so you think, for example, first off, you have to go off the assumption that we know for without a doubt that it won't the Earth will be less survivable because of our actions today. Like we have to know that for a
No.
fact.
I don't
That
even
is
have to know
not
for sure. I can use it as a
no
purely hypothetical. I can say
no,
if
but
it
hold
were
on.
possible.
But if you're actually impacting the lives of billions of people with policies today, you're spending
Yeah,
money, you're impeding
yeah,
certain things from happening
yeah.
in order to stave off something that you don't even actually know is going to happen. That's completely different.
No, fair
It's
enough.
like it
But that's not part of the principle that. So I
like
don't
it's
need
not
to
the
know
same
for
thing as
sure.
like
I'm saying,
castrating someone, for example,
wait,
and
but
like
you
we know
asked me
for
to
a fact.
establish. You asked me to establish a principle. I'm trying to establish it. So what
Okay,
I'm saying is,
okay, go ahead.
I can do it in the hypothetical. So even
Mhm.
if I don't know for sure that there's going to be some kind of catastrophic doomsday event, that's a direct consequence of climate policies that we have right now. If left unchanged, like I can say hypothetically, if it were possible for human beings to drastically change our environment such that future generations would no longer be able to survive here, then I can make an argument with the hypothetical that we ought not do that in that situation and in that case. And that would be establishing the principle. Then from there, I would need to establish whether or not, to your point, that we're actually in the process of doing precisely that, which is what you're trying to rebut right now. But I haven't even got there yet. I was just trying to establish the principle. The idea that we're inherently more valuable than future generations of people is an extremely morally controversial idea. I don't buy that for a second.
Oh my. So okay, I'm sorry. You would. So no, that's actually sort of I guess it would be an offshoot of like utilitarianism. Being like you want to create the greatest amount of good possible for the greatest amount of people, even if it actually includes
No, that's not my
but
principle. I'd
so
actually, I think what you're
but
saying is
then
utilitarian because you're saying
no,
that it's the greatest happiness for the amount of people who are alive today. And what
no,
I'm
no, no.
saying is
That's not what I'm
my
saying at
principle
all.
is
I'm
we
I'm saying
owe.
that there are individual rights that each and every single one of those people. I'm not talking about social groups. I'm not talking about populations. I'm talking about people, human beings that
Well,
are
that is a
alive
population.
today.
That's a
It-
population.
sure, but it's made up of what?
Of people.
Individuals.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
fair
rights.
enough. In the
Groups
plural, but
don't have rights. Like the definition of
well,
justice. Groups don't.
hold
No,
on.
no.
Groups of individuals do have rights, right?
I'm sorry. How
Groups
so?
of
Because now we're.
individuals have rights. So, for
I
example,
mean, the Ku Klux Klan would actually agree with you on that.
for example, let's take the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was a point in history where people were advocating for the civil rights of a particular group of people, a subpopulation of human beings that were being deprived of them systematically, i.e., black people,
The
right?
individual right of people who were belonging to certain groups. At the end of the day,
Right. But all
what were those
wait, hold on.
those marches?
The
Those marches
difference.
were.
Wait, hold on. I'm trying to make the point clear to you. Okay.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is, I agree with you that that the rights are going to pertain to the individuals. But when we're talking about them at the group level, right? We're not saying that the rights belong to the group, whatever that means, whatever kind of level of abstraction you mean by that. What I'm saying is, we're talking in aggregate, a group of individuals to each of which we owe rights, and we need to be vigilant and make sure we don't deprive them of those. That's what we're doing. So when we group people together in this way, that's what we're doing for political reasons. That's one of the reasons why we have political advocacy. That's one of the reasons why it's so powerful.
Yeah, but it actually defeats the point sometimes when you're actually giving special privileges to people because they belong to a certain group rather than because of their individual merit, and that happens all the time. Just because we're talking about it in the just because we're using the aggregate in our rhetoric doesn't mean that the principle itself isn't lost to people who
Okay,
use
but you're
those
getting a
aggregates.
little lost in the sauce because what I'm trying to argue against. So there's several things again that you said that I'm trying to argue against. One that you won't let go for some reason is that the idea that people who are alive today are somehow priority over or are more valuable than people who are going to
Yeah,
be alive in the future
they have rights because they're
because they
alive.
actually exist
Yeah,
right
they're
now in the
alive.
present.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
then,
actually
so
what it
then,
means.
okay, so then by that logic, everybody who existed in the past had priority over us now, but back then because
Yeah,
they were alive when we weren't. Correct?
yeah.
So,
Like in their
so
time,
yeah,
before we existed,
yeah.
whatever their individual rights was not superseded by what may
So
have happened to us when we were when we came into existence.
So if they would have acted in such a way as to make our planet less sustainable right now, that would have been cool because they were alive before we were.
I didn't say it was cool, but there are certain things
Well,
that
wait. Please stop, because I want to hone in on that.
no, let me
If
finish
you
my
have
sentence. Let me
any
finish my
kind
let
of
me finish my
objection to it,
sentence.
on what basis? Okay, on what basis would it not be cool to you? Because I'm really trying
Uh,
to explore this with you.
because we would in turn have to deal with whatever was happening, whatever the conditions were when we came to be alive.
And wouldn't
But
that constitute an injustice in your view? If we
no,
had to deal with the negligence of previous generation, that would not be
the
an injustice.
negligence. Hold on, the
Yes,
negligence.
yes.
No. Hold on a second. Again, you're talking about negligence, which is it actually hinges. It hinges on the assumption that they actually had the power to do it in the first place, that
No,
they
I know,
had
but
to
I'm using
actually
it as
do
a
it.
hypothetical. I'm using it as a hypothetical because I don't want to get bogged down into the argument you really want to have, which is whether or not human beings have the ability to do this. I'm saying hypothetically, if we lived in a world that
Hmm.
we inherited from previous generations, whereby our ability to survive was negatively impacted by the negligence of previous generations, would you consider that an injustice? Yes or no? This is all hypothetical
Uh,
for right now because
mm,
I'm exploring your application of the principle right now.
oh yeah. Okay, so I wouldn't because, and I'll tell you why. Uh, of course, I'm going to tell you why. So the whole concept of justice and the whole concept of like having the right is to be able to have a claim over someone for an action that they took in order to specifically harm you, right?
No, not necessarily, because
Uh,
sometimes people harm people inadvertently or accidentally,
Of course, and it's all
or through
tort.
negligence. Like they're not
And
aiming the impact to
the
harm
legal
people.
term for that is tort.
Okay, fine.
So tort is a
I know what
measurable
tort is.
damage.
I know what tort
Yeah.
is. Okay.
But just anyone who doesn't know, but tort is a measurable damage done to someone, uh, and it has to be. You can't do it like what's it called? It has to be like essentially part of like the individual person that you're doing it to, or a group of people, or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
It can't be like a general. Oh well, you ruined this entire part of the world, therefore you are held liable for whatever happens in subsequence to that.
Why not though? I'm just like, can you? I really need you to walk me through your logic here because I don't understand how you can claim that any group of people or entity, like a corporation or maybe an organization,
Mhm.
can cause irreparable, immeasurable harm to subsequent populations and yet not be held responsible legally or morally in any way, shape, or form, just in virtue of the fact that they were alive first. That's a bold claim, if I'm understanding you correctly. And if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. But I want to know, like, if that's your argument, that's one of the most bizarre arguments I've ever heard.
Oh, sure. I'll clarify. So essentially what I'm saying to you, and we're talking about, and let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about climate change, and we're talking about a one generation's effect on the actual climate and the subsequent suffering of the generation coming after it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say, for example, and we can make it a pretty tenable example. Let's say we live in on an island, and this island here is mostly forested, and one generation uh, completely uses up the wood. Like essentially, they flatten the island, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which those trees produce food. They had
Yep.
fauna in them that
They can
was
they
providing
can
food for
they can
people. Yeah,
provide
at the
material
time.
to provide shelter, etc.
Yeah, things like that. I think we think we can agree that's a pretty tenable example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if that previous generation were to completely what's it called essentially use a scarce and finite resource, at that point they're not responsible for the hardship that people will have once they are born into this world, just as they are not what's it called you're essentially born into this world and you have to deal with the environment as it is. The environment in itself is not unchanging. It's not because before human beings there were no changes in like in environments, for example. Like these things happened consistently. There are places in the world that become arid as a result of, like, for example, an invasive species, or certain types of bugs or whatever it may be, start to eat a certain amount of food. It starts to affect the actual ecosystem, and then in turn that place changes like radically. We're giving what's it called we're looking at human beings as being an exceptional changer of environment. Of course, we're
Yeah.
the best ones at it,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
principle in itself is not based on who's best at it or not. It's like, or who's essentially most impactful. Like
How could it
it's a difference
not?
in
That
degree. It's not a difference. No, hold on. Let me explain. It's a difference in degree and not a difference in type. Do you
but
understand what
it
I'm
is a
saying?
different.
It's
No, because it is a difference
no.
in type. Because it is such a vehement difference in degree. That's why it's a difference in
Hold on
type.
a second. Hold on a
We
second.
have
Hold on
the
a second.
ability to impact the planet in a way that no other non-human animal does. That's a
Sure,
fact.
sure, absolutely. But
Okay.
it doesn't mean that there aren't other animals that impact the planet in a way
Of course,
that
there are other
doesn't
animals that
affect
impact the
other.
planet.
Yeah,
Stop it.
but
Okay. Of
no,
course,
hold
there
on.
are.
No, let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence. That doesn't affect future generations
Of course.
of that same species, of other species,
Of
or of
course.
even entire
Of course.
ecosystems.
But not to the
Uh,
degree that human beings do. That's why
Again,
that's why it's a
but
different
that's what I'm
kind.
saying. Like you're making a difference in kind in your argument when
Yes.
it's actually a difference in degree.
But it's a difference in kind in virtue of the difference in degree because the difference in degree is so dramatic. That's what I'm saying.
I Okay. So at which point does it switch from degree to kind?
It's it's
Because the
the gap
consequences we're
between
talking about are the same.
it's the gap between our species and whatever the closest, most impactful non-human species is. That's so pronounced that it actually makes it a difference in kind at that point because it's not even close.
Yeah, but why?
Okay, in the same way to analogize it, that we actually categorize the performance of the best or top male athletes versus the performance of the top female athletes as a difference in kind, partly
No, no, no,
because
no.
of the
What? No, no, hold on
degree,
a second. What are you talking about?
partly, hold on, I'm trying to
In
say,
different in
partly
kind.
because of the degree of the difference between the top male performers and the top female performers. That's
So
one
it
of the
becomes a
reasons why.
different sport.
We also do it. Wait, I'm trying to be fair here. We also do it because we take males and females to be natural kinds in general. So there's that part too. So you complain about that if you want to. I'm not trying to hide that part. But like even if we considered males and females to be of the same kind and we didn't really acknowledge any differences between males and females, we would definitely acknowledge the differences in performance, all the other things staying the same. And that's what I'm saying is, like, that's the analogy. Like, it's such a difference that it would be weird not to separate them or view them as something that is significantly different. And that's
First
what
off,
I'm saying.
first off, you sound like a bigot right now. But
You could, okay, fine, but like I don't really care.
no,
The point still stands.
but
Like
I don't think that's a good example because we're talking about the same activity. We're talking about the degree in which someone can actually perform it.
wait. But we're talking about the same activity. That's why it's a good analogy. So we're talking about your ability of a species to impact the climate in such a way as to dramatically lower the ability of subsequent generations or populations of that same species to survive. That we're talking about that with respect to any species.
Yeah,
So it's the same activity.
I'm saying, like, for example, just because a woman can't run as fast as the top woman can't run as fast as the top man doesn't mean that they're not doing the same kind of thing.
Exactly. And just
But
okay.
but
So
that's my
just
entire
because a
point. Like,
non-human animal can't negatively impact subsequent populations as dramatically or negatively as human beings can with respect to their population doesn't mean they're not doing the same activity, which is
okay,
negatively impacting the environment or the survivability of their species. That's the activity.
exactly. And there
So
are
why
hold on a second. There are much more profound impacts on what's it called, on, like, as far as like animals go, we're the most impactful. That's hands down.
yes.
But
Yes.
as far as like impacts that can be had on the environment, the natural changes in the environment are much more impactful than anything human beings have done, and we've seen it
I,
in history, within human history, as a matter of fact.
you're all over the place in my
No,
opinion
no,
right
no,
now.
no. I'm really
Dude,
not. No, hold on a second.
I'm not arguing that human beings have a
We're
greater
talking.
impact than natural impact.
No,
I
hold
don't
on a
even
second. Hold
understand
on.
that dichotomy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is out of all of the species that have the ability to impact our environment, right?
Yes.
Human beings are clearly the most impactful. And I'm also arguing, consistent with the latest and greatest of climatological science, by the way, which I actually have something to show you from NASA in a second.
No, but
All of
before
the
we
evidence
move
for
on,
climate
real
change. Hold on,
quick.
wait. Human beings have the
Uh-huh.
human beings have historically impacted the planet in ways that are potentially devastating if left unchanged in the future. We have the scientific basis to make claims like that. That is the
Mm,
scientific basis on top of which, or which undergirds climate change science or climate science related to climate change. Okay, that justifies policy positions that are trying to take into account the potential negative, devastating impacts that we can have on our planet and making sure that we either delay those impacts or avoid those impacts, right? You are sitting here arguing as if all of that science is unfounded because of some dude in some article who claimed that the idea that human beings can control climate with carbon emissions, which is the most misleading way to put it, because the
some
idea
dude.
isn't that we control the climate. The
That dude's
idea
a
is that
climate
we
scientist,
impact
actually.
the climate. That but control suggests that we're like picking like how many days of summer do we want? All right, let's
No,
emit
no,
this much carbon dioxide or something like that.
that is an ungenerous. What's it called? That is actually not even a
Dude,
quote from him.
control
No,
means
hold
that
on.
we are directing
No, no, I
carbon
understand,
emissions
but you're not
to
even
impact the
directly
climate in ways
quoting.
that we intend.
You're
That's what it means.
attributing rhetoric to someone who actually didn't say it. You're quoting the person who wrote the article and attributing it to Harman Hard,
Okay, fine,
who is the
fine.
actual climate
I'll
scientist.
attribute to the author. I'll attribute to the
Yeah,
author.
but
But
that's
I'm
not.
criticizing the claim regardless,
No, I
right?
understand, but my whole point when I brought up, as far as like changes that happen naturally that can actually completely lower survivability more than anything that we can actually do. The whole point is the right to have a survivable environment is not
Uh-huh.
something that actually exists. Do you understand what I'm
Dude,
saying?
no, not fully. So there are
No,
all kinds of naturally occurring phenomena that can negatively impact the survivability of species and human species among them.
that
And
happened
and
naturally
we
has
would not
happened
treat
for as
them
long.
the same as the set of all man-made or man-prompted or man-caused phenomena that can negatively impact the
Yeah,
survivability of the
but
human
you're
species.
indicting not a person, but a group of people. Like, who are you talking about?
I'm
Like,
not
there.
indicting anyone.
No,
I'm
you
not
are. But
indicting anyone.
hold on a
I'm
second,
not.
because
I'm not.
you're talking about like moral, like essentially, like moral responsibility. Moral
Yes.
responsibility is given to a person or to a human race, because that's what we're talking about here.
No. What? No. What I'm saying is the
Because
people
that
who have the
impact is the
ability.
collection of
Wait.
people's actual actions.
No, dude. You have to. So we're not.
Is it
I think you're
not?
not being nuanced enough. So the moral part would be strictly applied to the people who have the ability to change or alter policies that direct human behavior and action in such a way
Oh,
as to
okay.
direct human behavior and action in such a way where it's not continuing to contribute to potentially devastating climate change, but is contributing to either the opposite of that or to the minimization of the harm from those potential outcomes. Right. That's
So
where
how
that's where the criticism comes in. So insofar
I'm
as human
starting to
beings have
understand
the
what you
ability
mean
to
a bit better.
so insofar as human beings have the ability to direct our policies and organize our societies in ways that direct human behavior so that we're not emitting as much carbon, or we're not doing whatever causes droughts, whatever causes the sea levels to rise, right? We're not doing the things that contribute to that. And we're doing the things that make our futures more sustainable on this planet, right? Insofar as we fail to do that, we have a moral failure as a society. So that's the moral implications that I'm
Okay,
talking about.
and I'm starting to understand a little bit better who you're attributing blame to, and that's specifically about policymakers. And you don't think that there is a moral blame, a more impending one, as a matter of fact, to someone whose policies lead to the death of millions, if not billions, of people, if those policies actually fail to do not only to do what they're trying to get it to do, but also cause the actual like disappearance of our actual, for example, this is a great example. Agricultural systems around the world are 100% reliant on fossil fuels. If you cut carbon emissions in the agricultural sector by 50%, you're cutting down uh, food production by 50%. That's not,
But
you're
the
telling me
moral
there's
assessment
no
is going to be,
moral implications to
yeah, of
killing.
course there are. Of course there
So
are. But the
and I'm
moral
saying
assessment is going to be,
those are much more impending and actually supersede the rights of people who don't exist yet. Like that's I don't think that's a crazy claim, and I don't think that's actually
well, that's not what you
something.
claimed before. So
No,
you're
but
attempting to be more nuanced now, which I appreciate. But
no, but
the point I'm making still stands. So I'm not denying that the moral assessment of the situation, such as you described it, would be more complicated, because basically it will become kind of a
mhm.
conundrum or a moral dilemma, because you have to weigh competing interests. You have to weigh the competing interests of the people who are alive today versus the people who are going to be alive later. You have to weigh the competing interests of the people who benefit from the status quo in terms of our energy versus the people who would stand to benefit later for whatever technological or advancements we make in the energy sector, etc. And a lot of that stuff is really hard to assess because a lot of it is not, strictly speaking, predictable or reliably predictable, right? So there's ambiguity in the assessment itself, right? Also, you have the prospects that we can attempt to implement policies that fail to reach their desired outcome and instead bring about further devastating consequences, even in the attempt to quote unquote save the planet, right? And so I think you're taking for granted that that's going to happen, or that that's more likely to happen for some reason. But let's say that it happens. The immoral assessment of the attempt to save the planet, and then that resulted in a failure and some catastrophic things, would like that would be a complicated, nuanced moral assessment, and there would be some people to blame for that for sure. No one, I don't think that I would argue that the policymakers in question would be blameless for the catastrophe that they brought about, even though it was well intended. One of the biggest criticisms that I have for a lot of Democrat policies right now in the status quo is that a lot of them are very well intended, but they end up doing the opposite of what they're supposed to be doing, right? And those are fair criticisms, I think. But I also take into account what the intentions were, or at least I try to whatever
Yeah,
extent I believe
but
that the intentions were well
there's a
intended.
huge assumption as to what the intentions are, especially when it comes to
Fair
carbon.
enough. Fair enough. But
It's
that's a part of
giant.
the
As a matter of fact, I
That's
think
fine.
that's
That's
not
I
even
agree with
something to
that. But
rely on.
that's part of the assessment, though, is I have to a certain extent, like it's impossible to conclude the assessment unless I make some basic assumptions. And so I have sometimes I and actually that assessment is fallible in virtue of the fact that I could be wrong about those assumptions, right? But what I was trying to illustrate was that the moral calculus involved would be taking into account these factors. One, two, it doesn't change my main point. The main point that I was making was the idea that we can, you argued in such a way that suggested that you think that we can disregard future generations and the impacts that our decisions today can have on them merely in virtue of the fact that we're alive now and they're not. And what I was
Um,
problematizing was that idea.
okay. So, and to be fair, you weren't actually being very nuanced, as a matter of fact, as far as like who's to blame, for example, um, as far as like directing human action, which is something that is impossible to do. As a matter of fact, you can make policies all you want. You're not going to control what people do.
I would say I didn't verbalize the nuance. I have always been nuanced because what I verbalized later, I always thought.
Sure, but I was arguing against what you verbalized.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair. That's fair.
And point is, as far as what's it called? What you just mentioned with the consequences of these policies and who is to blame, and the fact that it would be immoral to disregard the consequences in future generations, despite the fact that we cannot entirely even tell whether or not, like, one of the main points, the reason why I brought this up also is like the whole, like, 99% of climate scientists agree, or 99% of scientists agree that climate change is actually real and happening, is completely false. And
What?
absolutely,
According to who?
according to who is it 99%?
Dude, what? Like, so do you
No.
like cite a poll so I can, because it depends on the poll
No,
you're
but
running.
that's okay. That's a claim that's been made. Like,
But it's
I'm
okay.
not. The burden of proof is not on me.
Okay, I can. I mean,
And
I can
it
provide
it is
evidence.
sure you can. But what's it called? And these 1,100 scientists scientists and professionals who signed this declaration are a big, like, show of an actual dissenting voice within the movement, which claims the complete opposite. And it's like what are they all? What's it called? My point is, this is not settled science as
I
much
got
as people would love to talk.
97%, bro. 97%.
97%. Oh,
Yeah,
so
I'm about to establish it.
we're using ad populum fallacies now.
That's higher. That's higher than the percent of protests that were mostly peaceful.
That's hilarious. But
Black Lives Matter.
either way, the number of people who agree with a certain conclusion is not proof that it is actually true. It isn't.
Yeah,
Like,
but you're
logically, it isn't.
downplaying
I
the
am.
epistemological value of scientific consensus, and I don't like the way you're
I
doing it. So
No,
let
no,
me establish the
I
facts real quick.
no, but I do. I actually do downplay it deliberately, as a matter of fact, because it is
I
not a
know.
logical argument.
Okay,
It's not a logical argument.
all
But
right.
hold
Let
on
me
a second.
counter it
Hold on.
because you
No,
said a
hold on.
lot of stuff.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't even go into what I was
Dude,
trying to say.
can
No, I
I
didn't.
just
Bro,
eviscerate this real quick,
nah,
please?
hold on.
Because you've
Stop,
been
stop,
saying a
stop,
lot of stuff,
stop.
bro.
Nah, stop. Hold on.
Come on, man.
Nah, bro. Hold on.
Can I go in real
Because
quick, please?
nah, hold on. Let me finish this real quick.
You keep
Point
droning
is,
on, and I feel like you're trying to block
no,
me
no.
from just
I'm really not. I'm really not, because I do have cogent points to make. One, the
dude.
scientific consensus of a certain issue is not proof that it's actually true. Like
Not necessarily.
most
It's possible to have scientific consensus overwhelmingly in favor of something
yeah,
that turns out to be
but
false.
it's
You're right.
not. Of course, like, that happens all the time.
They used to cite all of the scientists that said smoking was healthy or some shit, right? For example.
There's millions of examples of this.
Okay,
Bloodletting
fine.
or washing your
Okay,
hands before
fine.
you
Okay,
do
fine.
operations.
I agree with that.
Um,
I agree with that.
Point is,
In general, I agree
there
with the
there
possibility. I
is,
should say.
yeah, of course. I mean, it's basically logic. But the point is, there are dissenting voices within the movement that are
I
absolutely and utterly shut down. Not only, one, by ridicule, two, by not being funded whatsoever by these international scientific boards, who for some reason, it's almost like there's a lot of money in it, like trillions of dollars, who for some reason are gung ho and completely convinced of the predictions that are being made and have been made for probably like 5 decades at this point, or actually, it's been like 6 decades of these predictions, which again and again we've seen fail again and again. So it's like we're continuing to buy something that has consistently been used to make faith claims that have not materialized. And on top of this, we're talking about changes in temperature that have happened in a more drastic way within human history prior to the industrial age. Like, actually, as a matter of fact, 1,000 years before the industrial age. And I can
But
share my
climate change
screen
is
if
not
you
just
like.
about temperature change. I keep telling you that, and it feels like it's not
Okay,
sticking.
and we can talk about the what's it called, the average occurrence of, like, droughts, for example, or floods, and by
Rising
the
sea
way,
levels,
these are
melting polar
rising
ice
sea
caps,
rising sea levels.
which are correlated. Yeah, no, I'm
Uh,
dead serious. Rising sea levels is correlated with melting polar ice
No,
caps.
but I know what you're saying, but I'm saying, like, since we've talked about this since the 1800s, like, the rise in sea level has not been a real issue, as a matter of fact, and we can see it's not even a uniform issue, as a matter of fact. Certain places it has risen more than other places. Certain places, not at all, actually.
Okay, but it's still an issue. Okay,
Hold
well,
on,
I'm not
but
saying it's uniform. I'm saying these are examples of climatological phenomena shifting or changing in various different places on the planet that go beyond rising temperature. That's all I'm
yeah,
saying. So I'm trying to be
but
more
a lot
nuanced
of
about what
those
we're
are
talking about.
weather patterns, and weather is
Yeah,
not the
but that's
same thing
the
as
climate.
yeah.
Climate
Okay,
entails the weather.
but all of the worst floods that have happened in
Uh,
like the past like 100, 200 years
uh,
have happened mostly in the Bay of Bengal. Like most of them,
okay.
like the vast majority of them happened in one place on the planet. It's
Okay.
like these things, or for example, in America, like we have things like Tornado Alley, where like almost 80% of the world's tornadoes occur in this one place. It's like you can
That's not a
continue.
refutation of climate
No,
change.
no. Let me
It's a
finish my sentence, and
demonstration of that.
you'll understand what I'm talking about. We're talking about weather patterns. We're talking about fluctuations in weather
In
patterns.
part, we're talking
These
about weather patterns.
that's but we're using that as an example of a climatological consequence, and
Uh,
that's actually a non-linear junction between those two things. It's
but I
like
never said it was
it's not.
linear. I don't know
Oh
that
my
any
god! But the
climate
claim.
scientists say that.
But we're talking about increases in floods and increases in droughts, right? And forest
Uh,
fires, right?
uh,
These are
yes, but the causal
weather
mechanisms are way more
phenomenons.
nuanced. Yeah, but they're not like
You can
dominoes.
call it
Like
nuance. You can call it nuance, but it's actually
they're
not
way more
something that we can look
complex.
forward to.
What I'm saying is the causal relationships are way more complex than they're not one to one. It's not like one domino hits another domino, then hits another domino, and then all of a sudden we got a hurricane. Like that's not quite how it works. And so if your model for what people are saying in this discourse is that it's not an accurate model.
I'm sorry, we're not talking about like predictions of increases in floods and increases
No,
in
we are
droughts
talking
and
about predictions of increases in various different climatological phenomena
due to what?
as a result of carbon emissions. But
Uh-huh.
what we're not doing is
But
saying that
carbon emissions lead to
that
what
those
though?
causal mechanisms are linear. That's what we're not saying.
But hold on a second. The reason why those it's considered carbon is considered a causal mechanism, a causal factor, is because it
Uh,
raises the temperature of the earth, right?
that's part of what it does, yeah, for sure.
But that's most of what we're talking about.
That's
Like
well,
because we're
that's
talking
one
about
part of
like
a wait, no, wait, that's one
no
part of
no
a
no hold on a
complex
second. But I've heard
climatological
this
system of
claim. I've
weather.
heard this claim being made
Dude,
multiple times. Like
wait,
2% increase in
wait.
in general.
You gotta let me get it out so that I can make sure you understand in no uncertain terms what's wrong with the claim you're making. Okay, like we're talking about that as one facet of a complex system of climatological phenomena that has various different effects, right? And it's not just one to one. Like this causes this, this causes this, this causes this. Now we have a tornado. That's not how. It's not quite how it works, right? Like the
So
causal
how does it
mechanisms are
work?
so
But like
nuanced, and
talk about the nuance. Like be specific about
but I'm
that
not a
nuance.
climate expert, so I can't even give you
But
an
hold on a second.
accurate.
Hold on a second. But then you're talking to me about a mechanism that you do not understand,
I
right?
understand it enough to know that it doesn't work the way you
But
describe it,
what
though.
part of it do you understand, and what part of, like what are the mechanics that
I
you understand?
understand that it is complex in a particular kind of way, and that it
Yeah,
is not
but
linear. That's what
but
I understand.
how? But what mechanisms? What mechanisms do you know? Like at least an overview of
What mechanisms for what specifically? Like, do you want me to explain the causal
anything
mechanisms of hurricanes?
of
Do you want me to explain
of
the
not
causal
hurricanes,
mechanisms of
not hurricanes,
what do you
but
want me
the
to explain then?
changes. You said that there are nuances in the
Uh-huh.
causal relationship between the temperature rise, the what's it called? Well, actually, let's start with carbon emissions, which
Uh-huh.
then cause temperature rise, among other things, and
Right?
which eventually lead to a complex system that puts out, as far as like adverse and catastrophic
Yeah, like
weather
melting
patterns.
polar ice caps and things like that, right?
Yeah. I
Uh-huh.
want you to explain the mechanism that we're talking about. And if you can as well,
But I don't have the relevant climatological expertise to
but
do
then
that.
what are you quoting?
I'm quoting the scientists that which you won't let me read from NASA who say
No,
that
but
first of all that scientists agree on climate change. The vast
okay,
majority of
so
actively
they agree
publishing
on it,
climate
sure.
scientists 97% agree that humans are causing global warming and climate change. Most of the
Hmm.
leading science organizations around the world have issued public statements expressing this, including
Hmm.
international and U.S. science academies, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the whole host of reputable scientific bodies around the world. A list of these organizations is provided here. I just clicked on that. I can show that if you guys want me to. There's also a whole bunch of sources that we can read that establish all of the evidence that is that
Yeah,
that
but
that,
what
that
is
the
that?
scientific consensus is based on.
But
So
let's
do
get
you want me
into
to
that.
open up
Like,
the source? Okay, fine.
yeah, but
So
like,
scientific
because
consensus
you
Earth's
talk
climate.
about it, and you're defending a mechanism that I want you to actually extrapolate on.
Okay, fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I'm not an expert. You're asking a non-expert to give you expert level information. So if that's what you're asking for, that's not going to happen because I'm not an expert. But I can do my best because I have no problem um,
Hmm.
citing all of my sources up against your lack of sources.
I can give you listen.
For
If you
sure.
want sources, I can actually pull up one. I actually have one
I
pulled up, as a matter
dare
of fact.
you. I dare you, in fact.
Oh,
So
okay.
here we go. I am going to, let's see, hold on. Where did it go? Is it showing? Okay, here it goes. All right, here we go. How do we know climate change is real? Okay, this is from NASA. NASA does not strike me as particularly all that biased. As further evidence for this, we have ground news. 69% is centrist, whereas this is which is where I live. 19% right leaning, 12% left leaning. So it's more centrist and right leaning than anything else for sure. I guess I guess you could
What,
say
NASA?
it's more centrist and left leaning than right leaning, and it's more right leaning and centrist leaning than left leaning, but it's mostly centrist. Yeah, NASA. Um, so there is unequivocal evidence that the Earth is warming at an unprecedented rate. Human activity is the principal cause. Okay, takeaways. While Earth's climate has changed throughout history, the current warming is happening at a rate not seen in the past 10,000 years. According to Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, since systemic scientific assessments began in the 1970s, the influence of human activity on the warming of the climate system has evolved from theory to established fact.
Mm.
Scientific information taken from natural sources such as ice cores, rocks, tree rings, and from modern equipment like satellites and instruments all show signs of a changing climate. From global temperature rise to melting ice sheets, the evidence of the evidence of a warming planet abounds. Okay. The rate of change since the mid 20th century is unprecedented over millennia. Earth's climate has changed throughout history. Just in the last 800,000 years, there have been 8 cycles of ice ages and warmer periods, with the end of the last ice age about 11,700 years ago, marking the beginning of the modern climate era and of human civilization. Most of these climate changes are attributed to very small variations in Earth's orbit, and that change the amount of solar energy our planet receives. Okay. Now, here's a graph here. This is going back millennia, like freaking 800,000 years ago.
Can you zoom in on
And
that? I can barely
yeah,
see
yeah,
it.
yeah. I got you. Better.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a little chart here. Um, this is the carbon dioxide level parts per million, measured in parts per million. Okay. So right here is the 1950 level, and up here is the current level. But this goes back 800,000 years ago. So you can see how the levels have been up and down. And I think these spikes at the top are the 8, or maybe the lows actually would be the correspond to the ice ages,
Hmm.
the 8 ones that they mentioned. For millennia, atmospheric carbon dioxide had never been above this line. And this is what line it was in 1950. This is the current level. Okay. This is something that was actually, I remember this was emphasized in that one documentary, Inconvenient Truth. Um, so so science has established that there is a correlation between the rise in carbon dioxide levels and various different climatological phenomena. So it stands to reason that if the levels are here in the modern age, that we're going to see more drastic climatological phenomena as a result, to whatever extent that these contribute to it. Right? Like, this is established science. Let me undo. Let me reset the distance or whatever. Okay. The current, and I'm not going to read all of this. The current warming trend is different because it is clearly the result of human activity since the mid 1800s, and is proceeding at a rate not seen over many recent millennia. Okay. I have a citation here if you want me to read that. It is undeniable that human activities have produced the atmospheric gases that have trapped more of the sun's energy in the Earth's system. So the part of the global warming phenomenon, as it used to be called, is that the more carbon dioxide you have in the atmosphere, the more of the sun's energy that you can trap in the atmosphere. Hence, warming, the increase in temperatures, etc.
Hmm.
This extra energy has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land, and that's one of the contributing factors to melting polar ice caps. And widespread and rapid changes in the atmosphere, ocean, cyrosphere, and biosphere have occurred. Last paragraph I'm gonna read. Earth orbiting satellites and new technologies have helped scientists see the big picture, collecting many different types of information about our planet and its climate all over the world. These data collected over many years reveal the signs of the patterns of a changing climate. So to deny that human beings have the ability to impact these very advanced, complicated systems is weird in virtue of all of this kind of evidence. You'd have to deny the factual scientific basis of all of this evidence in a way that explains how these causal explanations don't work or how they're problematic.
But notice how they actually don't say causal. You use causal.
What?
You
That's implied logically, though.
no. You don't imply causality. You prove
Dude,
causality.
what?
No. You're talking about
This is
correlation.
establishing
Oh,
causal relationships, though. That's what the data does.
no. It's establishing correlation.
Oh, okay, fine. You're right. So they are
That's a huge
establishing a
hold
lot
on,
of
but
correlation. No,
that's a
I'm not trying to
huge
trivialize it.
point.
I'm not trying to trivialize it, but one of the reasons why you do this is because a lot of specific kinds of correlation imply causation, bro. Like one correlation doesn't necessarily imply a causation between two. Like if there's a correlation between two different things in a system, that doesn't necessarily imply causation. But if you have consistent correlations, that does, and that's what this is establishing. This is a plethora or preponderance, I should say, of evidence in favor of the idea that human beings have the ability to impact the planet in such a way as to cause a lot of the potentially devastating climatological phenomena that we're seeing that give rise to droughts, that give rise to forest fires, that give rise to multipolar ice caps, which negatively impact not only human species but other non-human species, which could contribute to hunger, which could contribute to people drowning, which could contribute to people losing their homes, people burning to death, which could contribute to people not being able to get potable water, and people not being able to water their crops. That can contribute to starvation as well, etc. Like we depend on our environment and our planet in various different ways to survive, dude. Like that's obvious. Like at this point, I don't even understand what you're arguing. like even if we went with the whole correlation thing, like nothing about these correlations would undermine the idea that human beings are doing things that are giving
But
rise to these effects.
but that's not a logical argument. Like if we're talking about
How?
the claim that human beings are the main cause of this climate change, we don't provide evidence and what's it called, an established causality simply by establishing correlation. That's not how that works.
Also, just to correct you factually, so this
Hmm.
site did actually say cause, by the way. There's unequivocal evidence that the earth is warming at an unprecedented rate. Human activity is the principal cause. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
establish
and
that.
sure, they can make that claim, but they did not establish causality.
They, okay, what would it take to establish causality, and how have they not
one
established causality?
one one actually one you would have to actually come up with a falsifiable theory, meaning like there are things that you are able to find, like you know what falsifiability is, of course.
Yes.
Being able to find factors that are like disproving the theory that you're making. There's no such thing.
There is falsifiability to this, dude.
Uh, Please point it out.
Okay. So you want me to point out what the falsifiability of climate change is?
Yes, because it has not been. I guarantee you won't be able to because there is none.
One second.
Also, what's it called? Um, Although that what's it called? Like you showed a oh shit, almost almost exited out. So if you superimpose the temperature to that graph of carbon emissions, do you think it would actually match?
Sorry, ask the question again.
If you superimpose temperature with that graph, would it match?
If I superimpose temperature with the graph that I showed, would it
Like
match this graph?
as carbon emissions, yeah, as
This
carbon emissions went up, you would see an increase in temperature. And as carbon emissions went down, you would see a decrease in temperature.
okay.
Do you think that would happen if you superimpose those periods?
Do I think that so when the spike in carbon, would there be higher temperatures, like average temperatures? Is that what you mean?
Yes,
Not necessarily, because I don't think that. So carbon emissions. The more carbon you have in the atmosphere, my understanding is that it traps more of the solar energy. That doesn't necessarily correspond to hotter temperatures everywhere on the planet.
but the average global temperature is what we use to measure that.
Right. So I
So
mean,
that's
if you're talking about
that's
the
taking into
average, if
account
you're
the
talking
entire
about the
system.
average, I don't. So the average global temperature. So if you're talking about the average global temperature, I would expect there to be the highest temperatures that we have on record around the time where we had the highest we've ever had in the last 800,000 years in parts per million in carbon dioxide, which I think
Okay.
is true. So I'd expect that.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to show you what that looks like in temperature. Um, do you see it?
I think so. I see a graph.
I'm trying to zoom in here. There we go. So as far as temperature, uh, we're talking about like right around here is essentially where we've had this spike. This is actually what corresponds with that gigantic, unprecedented spike in carbon dioxide right here. You see that, right? Modern warm period.
Yeah.
So this is temperature.
So thousands of years before present. So 0 years before present. Okay.
Yeah. 2,000 years ago, the temperature during the Roman warm period was higher than it is right now.
What do you mean the temperature? You
The
mean the
global
average?
average temperature was higher than it is right now.
Okay.
Look, actually, this is like central Greenland temperature in Celsius.
Okay.
So we're talking about like melting ice caps and
Uh-huh.
like temperatures in the places we're talking about these ice caps.
Uh-huh.
So prior to that, in the Bronze Age, the temperature was even higher than that uh, previous peak in the Roman warm period.
The average
Despite the
global
fact,
temperature.
no, central Greenland temperature.
I don't know what that means.
So Greenland being the North Pole.
So the temperature of one place on the planet, basically.
So where are the ice caps?
There's ice caps near Greenland for sure. There's one of them.
That's what we're
The
talking
one on the
about. Like,
North Pole. Yeah, but
but
sorry,
that's what
but I
when we're
thought
talking
you
about
said
melting ice caps.
we are talking about so one of the things that is often talked about in climate science is the melting polar ice caps for sure. I'm not denying that. What I was trying
As a
I'm a little
subsequence of,
annoyed by what I feel like is now I'm starting to feel is a little bit of a sleight of hand because I thought you said that the average global temperature
we can do that too.
was higher.
This is just one chart.
Okay, fine, but like that's okay. The reason why I asked the question I asked because I'm trying to specify what you're saying. So if this is
Okay,
not the average global
we can
temperature, that's
do.
fine. But if you
Look,
want to take the temperature of one place on the planet, where I guess where the polar, and then what's weird is like you left Antarctica out of
no,
it, but
hold
that's
on.
fine. I don't care. Like
Hold on, hold
that's
on, hold
fine.
on.
That's fine. But now I
we can
understand
do
what this means. I understand what this
we
means
can
now.
no, I get you, but we can do global average temperature as well.
Okay.
Uh,
I just the whole planet doesn't rise and fall at the same time with the that's not how it works. That's
no,
the
hold on a
point I was
second.
trying to
Hold on
get
a
at.
second. No. But we're if we're talking about global average temperatures, which is the
It's an
this is
average.
of course,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the temperature in Sri Lanka. We're not talking about the temperature in Texas. We're talking about global average temperatures, and that's what we're measuring when we're saying like changes in like as far as global warming. That's what it means. So if we're going to talk
Dude,
about the
this is
hold
such
on a second, hold on a second. If we're going
a
to talk about carbon emissions and their relationship with temperature, we're going to
why
like
are you
what are we
honing
talking?
in on temperature as if that's the only climatological phenomena that actually is impacted by the rise the amount of carbon emissions or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? Like that's what's annoying me because I
Because
started us
because
by establishing that there's a bunch of different phenomena that interact in very complex ways that go
like which
beyond just
ones?
rising temperatures.
Like which
Rising
ones?
temperatures is a factor. Rising
No,
temperatures
but
in
hold
various
on.
places on the planet is a factor in a lot of climatological phenomena, but it doesn't work like that
But
where
give
it's
me an
just like
example.
rising temperatures, more hurricanes, rising temperatures, more tornadoes,
No, that's
rising
not what I
temperatures,
said.
more
That's
droughts,
not what I
rising.
said. So
But you're
rising
but you're
average. Hold on a
arguing in a
second.
way that suggests that that's what you're saying when it's not
Yeah,
true.
but
And so that's what I'm annoyed
that's
by.
not what that's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm talking about, and I'm actually making a very very specific point right now, and I don't want to
Okay.
distract from it. And I'm talking about the relationship between carbon dioxide and temperature. Is there a correlation
Why?
between
Wait,
carbon
why?
dioxide?
Why are you
No,
doing
hold
that?
on a
Why are you
second.
doing that? Wait,
I'm
but
sorry.
establish the relevance of
Is
that.
there
Why are you honing in on that?
is there
As if
is
nothing else
there
matters.
so what effect does carbon dioxide have on the atmosphere?
Carbon dioxide has a whole bunch of effects on our climatological
What is it?
phenomena. It's not just one.
Okay,
It's not just there.
can
More
you
carbon
actually like
dioxide, therefore this happens. That's not how it works,
no, no,
dude.
no, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Then what is the claim that is being made? Like, be specific.
Dude, so you want me to read it again?
I mean, dude, that what we oh, if you
Like,
want to, but that's
the
actually my
current
point.
warming
Like,
trend is different because it is
oh,
clearly
actually,
the
I
result of
realized I
human
wasn't sharing the
activities.
right screen. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You weren't. So here, the current warming effect trend is different because it's clearly the result of human activity since the mid 1800s and is proceeding at a rate not seen over many recent millennia. It is undeniable that human activities have produced atmospheric gases that have trapped more of the sun's energy in the Earth system. Now, that Earth system encompasses a lot of complexity here in terms of climatological phenomena, in terms of what the causal mechanisms for hurricanes are, what the causal mechanisms for tornadoes are, what the causal mechanisms for floods are, what the causal mechanisms for droughts are, what the causal mechanisms for the melting of polar ice caps are. That's complicated.
Yeah, but
bro.
what is it trapping? What is it trapping?
It's trapping sun's energy,
How is the sun?
among which
No.
are things that give rise to higher
energy?
temperature. It's a bunch of First of all, the sun's energy. Oh my God. So you have all kinds of things from the light spectrum, including but not limited to ultraviolet rays. You have all kinds of radiation, a lot of which is kind of kept from us because it would like destroy us if it weren't for the magnetic shit that happens in the Earth and stuff
So
like
there
that.
are electromagnetic fields. There is
Yeah.
also mostly energy.
It deflects a
in the
lot of
form of
solar
heat.
radiation that's harmful, is my point. And you have the ozone
Yeah,
and
but
the protection that it gives us, etc.
it says
Right?
this extra energy has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land.
Yes.
So the energy that's been trapped
Yes.
within this Earth system by
Yes.
carbon dioxide has
Yes.
warmed the
Yes.
atmosphere, the ocean, and the land.
Yes.
So carbon dioxide and those atmospheric gases trapped energy
Yes.
that warms
Yes.
the planet.
Yes.
That is not any different from what I just said.
Yeah, but the part that you're
that's what it
trying
says.
really desperately to ignore
I'm really not.
is that the
I'm
causal
really not,
mechanisms
because
involved. Hold on, the causal mechanisms involved in the climatological phenomena that we see, right, are more than just rising temperatures, therefore tornado. Like the way that they
oh
interact is
man, but you
complicated,
keep
bro.
saying this, and my entire point, that's definitely not what I'm arguing, and I don't know why you think that that's what I'm arguing, because my entire point is the fact that climate and weather are not the same thing, and people often conflate them by saying that the climate change will then in turn change the or I'm sorry, what I mean is like the people use changes in weather as evidence for climate change, when I'm saying that it's not that simple. That is actually,
why wouldn't it
dude,
be evidence for climate
you
change?
literally just said that it's more complex than this happens, therefore there are tornadoes, therefore there are floods, and I'm literally saying the same thing, and I'm literally saying it because people use that as evidence of like, oh well, of course the earth is warming because this thing happened, which implies the mechanism of earth warming due to carbon dioxide causing those weather phenomena.
So you keep saying things that are just baffling to me. So like the
Oh my
idea
God.
that changes in weather patterns can't count as evidence for global climate change is weird, because the weather is a part of the climate, right? Like, how does the weather relate to the climate in your opinion?
The weather, as a matter of fact, the definition of climate is the collection of several weather systems. So an individual weather event is not only like, it's like 2 or 3 levels of magnitude below what is considered like, what's it called, enough time and what's it called, an area of weather patterns.
Okay,
to
I
be
agree.
considered what
I
a
agree with
climate
that.
is.
Can I stop you right there and say I agree with that?
Okay, yeah.
I don't think any climatologists or climate scientists who believes in global climate change worth their weight is arguing that individual weather events prove global climate change. They're talking about weather patterns over ridiculous spans of time. We're talking 800,000 years in the graph alone that I showed you, right? We're not just talking about one day was a hurricane,
Yeah.
therefore climate change, right?
Okay.
We're not
Exactly.
talking about
But
Hurricane Katrina, therefore climate change.
you're
We're
saying that
saying
that's what I'm arguing when I'm like
no,
that's
no, 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 no.
like
Wait, wait,
that's
wait.
one of
Stop.
the
That's not what
things
I
that
said. I didn't say that.
that
I didn't
drives
say
me
that's what
crazy.
you're arguing. I'm saying no climate scientist is arguing that individual weather events are proving climate change. What they're talking about are weather patterns over extended periods, ridiculously long spans of time, particularly focusing in on the span of time that human beings have existed and
Okay.
comparing
And
them with ones where we, pre-industrial age and stuff like that, so that we can get a sense for what's kind of normal.
okay, and then they're making predictions as to what the weather events that we're going to be facing due to the patterns that they've actually detected, right?
Eventually,
Like
yeah,
they're
they do.
yeah, yeah.
Because
So
of
they're making weather predictions.
they're making, I think, justifiable predictions that if we know that the higher amount of carbon emissions or carbon dioxide that you have in the atmosphere tends to lead to the kinds of climatological phenomena that make it hard to survive, and it can have devastating consequences for certain species, including but not limited to human
Uh-huh.
beings,
Perfect.
then it stands to reason that if we have the highest amount of carbon emissions that we've ever had in human
Uh-huh.
history, then
Uh-huh.
there's probably going to be a continuation or even a worsening reasonably of those
Okay.
conditions.
All right.
That's a fair prediction. It doesn't
Okay.
say that on this date in this year in fucking 2070 that we're going to have a hurricane. It's saying that we're probably going to have some worse weather. We're probably going to have a continuation of sea level rising because we're already seeing it. We're probably going to have more melting of polar ice caps. That's probably going to lead to more floods, particularly in areas like I think it was like uh, Florida, where it's like the level is lower than other areas in the country. We're probably going to see an extinct. Probably that's going to contribute to the extinction of polar bears because I don't know. There was that
The
documentary
ice
I saw a
caps
long time
are
ago.
melting.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
more
no.
polar ice caps,
Um
etc.
yeah,
It's gonna
there's
change the So like those are fair predictions. Like
yeah,
you're acting
but
like
that's what
motherfuckers
I'm
are pulling
talking
shit out of
about.
their ass. Like
They kind of are, to be honest with you.
how,
Uh
bruh?
because
How?
like you just explained, like you just read out of there, the carbon dioxide which they're using as like they're not using what's it called, um like, and if you have other mechanisms that you want to describe to me, I would love to hear them. But as far as we go right now, we're talking about the trapping of energy, thermal energy, as a matter of fact, specifically. And we're talking about how it correlates with the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that the temperatures, the thermal energy trapped in the earth, that's what temperature is. Like,
Yes.
there's thermal energy trapped in the earth,
Uh-huh.
was higher before this extremely unprecedented level of carbon emissions. And I'm telling you that
Wait,
that is a
that
basic
doesn't
flaw in.
dude, that doesn't follow from the okay. Let me show everybody
Dude,
your thing. That
I
doesn't
can I
follow
can
from
show
the
you.
graph that you. So
No,
this
no,
graph
no, no, no.
here,
Let me share my screen right now because I'm gonna show you a
you're
million year
sharing it right now.
outlook on. No, hold on. I'm not sharing the right page though.
Okay.
So this right here is a chart from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration from 2008, and this is a million year
2008.
outlook. 2008, yes.
Yeah,
Uh, this is a million year average global temperature.
you got to
Um,
make it bigger.
hold on. Is that better?
No, it didn't budge.
It didn't budge.
No, did you zoom in?
I did. It's way bigger on my screen right now.
Nope, it didn't budge at all.
That's
It
super
looks
strange.
exactly the same.
It's still,
Yeah,
bro. That's weird. Oh wait, hold on. It opened it. Let me share the actual. It opened a pop up. That's why. So let's see
and
here.
I gotta go in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, me too.
All
Actually.
right, this is bigger. Go
Um,
ahead.
yeah, yeah. So this is a million year outlook on the global average temperature, and we're
Right.
talking about currently right now. So this includes that 1950 period. of unprecedented rise in global temperature. As you can
Well,
see,
up to 2008, right?
up to 2008. But that
Yeah.
chart that you showed, it started in like 1950. Like
Yeah,
as
but
far as like
it went to
the 1950
2020.
line.
But it went to the 2020s. But go ahead.
Okay, sure.
Right, go
But
ahead.
either way,
I don't know how much higher the difference is of 12 years. To be fair.
yeah, it's either way. There the corresponding. If we're talking about correlation between temperature and the amount of gases that are in the atmosphere trapping energy, then what is going on with all of these periods? And we went back 800,000 years in in that chart, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So in the last 800,000 years, even 400,000 years ago, where the what's it called? Um, the global emissions, the carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere was a fraction of what it is today. Yet the
Yep.
global average temperature was able to rise past what it is today,
Yep.
and it did
Wait,
that
temperature
multiple
fluctuation,
times.
average temperature relative to today in degrees Celsius. Okay. Okay. So
It
this is a
hit.
global average?
Yes, just
Okay.
just the same as we use to measure the global average temperature today, and that we
Yeah.
use to make predictions as far as the impact of climate change.
How do
We
wait,
can see
how do we measure them this far back? What do we use?
ice core samples.
We measure the temperature. Okay. All right, cool.
Like they can derive it somehow.
Yeah, no, I got it. You're right.
What's it called? But the fact that it has multiple times reached that temperature level without a corresponding emission level, like we have to seriously take into consideration what that correlative relationship is. It's certainly not causal if you're seeing this, but what is that correlative relationship between temperature and greenhouse gases?
That's fair. So okay,
Like
so it seems so okay. So I'm trying to distill what you're saying. So we have at least one, two, three times in the last million years where
in the last
the
400,000 years
the
alone, not even as
well,
far
yeah,
back
but
as
this whole
800,000.
scale is a million though, and it's only passed this line four times. Four times total. One of them's current, but before that, three times. That's what I'm looking at. So
Yeah.
I've only said a million because the whole graph is a million. But in
Okay,
the last
gotcha.
million years, we've only had average global temperatures go higher than wherever this zero. This is what is this 0 degrees Celsius
Hmm.
as an average. So it's been higher than 0 degrees Celsius uh, three times in the last million years. And only one of those times in the last 800,000, because the graph didn't go back further, has the global carbon emissions been as high as it is now. So it stands to reason that there's at least possible for something other than a lot of carbon in the atmosphere to contribute to, or yeah, contribute causally to uh, high temperatures, high
Which is
global
yeah,
temperatures, right?
which is like my main point. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
there
that's
there
fine.
may be there may be many other reasons why this is happening, and by solely focusing on that one thing, we might be missing the entire pie. Like it's possible, and like, this is something that I think is a gigantic flaw in the argument.
Maybe, but not really, because like there's a whole bunch of other. So, are you taking this to be a refutation that the amount of
That
carbon
correlate that
dioxide in the atmosphere
is a causal. There's a causal
contributes
relationship
contributes
to it.
to contributes to the climatological phenomena that we consider dangerous
Uh,
to the
specifically,
survivability of our species?
yeah, it could even be some other atmospheric gas that we do not measure. Like that's the thing. There are millions of these things. We don't know which one is actually happening. And the fact that we have a correlation doesn't give us enough information to be like sinking trillions of dollars of resources and potentially killing millions of people. It's like that to me, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like as far as like the moral implications of superseding, because there's multiple parts to it. Actually, it's not just like superseding the rights of people in the future because we know that we're going to harm them. Like we don't even know that we're going to harm them. We don't even know what we're doing is going to help. And then on top of that, we're still going to supersede their rights over the people who are alive today, who are trying to even just survive. Like, I don't think people understand how hard it is just to live. It escapes them because it's so easy in places that we live. It really truly escapes them. Like, that shit is not easy. And the things that have to go right in order for us to sustain what we have today, like,
Mhm.
half these Muppets don't even understand it, let alone appreciate it.
Okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying. Nothing about what you've said so far undermines the idea, or at least a subset of the claims that were made in the thing that I was reading, which was there's a whole bunch of overwhelming scientific evidence that increased levels of greenhouse gases affect not only the temperatures of the Earth, but the climatological phenomena that we find dangerous. Like, so
Mhm.
those correlations have been established as well, right? And nothing about what you showed dispels with those correlations either. So then you'd have to explain how consistent with the correlation between increased greenhouse gases and the various different effects with the Earth's. Let me quote what they said so it can be more.
Mhm.
Many of the scientific instruments NASA uses to study our climate focus. Oh, sorry. Let me make it so.
You mind? Yeah.
Here we go. Many of the science instruments NASA uses to study our climate focus on how these gases affect the movement of infrared radiation through the atmosphere. From the measured impacts of increases in these gases, there is no question that increased greenhouse gas levels warm Earth in response. And then they use
Like, that's the
satellites.
thing I'm talking about.
These
Sorry.
data. Sorry, I'm almost done. Wait. Years patterns of climate. Oh, ice cores from Greenland, Antarctica, and tropical mountain glaciers show that the Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse gas levels. So that correlation, the fact that it's responding to changes in greenhouse gas levels, and this is demonstrated over shorter spans of time to make it clear that it's responding to those changes. Um, Ancient evidence can also be found in tree rings, ocean sediments, coral reefs, and layers of sedimentary rocks. This ancient or paleoclimate evidence reveals that current warming is occurring roughly 10 times faster than the average rate of warming after an ice age. Carbon dioxide from human activities is increasing about 250 times faster than it did from natural sources after the last ice age. These kinds of trends and claims are not debunked by what you pointed out. So that's why it's
Um,
really hard for me to like overturn my position
Well,
based
hold on,
on
hold
what
on,
you
hold on.
pointed out.
Before you move on, if we're talking about tree rings, sediment layers, and all those things, there are millions of other what's it called, and coral reefs. There are millions of other factors that can actually come into affecting the growth of a tree. Like, for example, what's it called, soil components. Whether they were a certain type of fauna that was actually feeding off of that area and producing more nutrients in the soil. There are millions of other factors that are, you can't just like be like, oh, it's only greenhouse gases that causes these sorts of factors to come about. That's
But
illogical.
that's not what the claim was. The claim was
But
that
they're
there's
saying,
evidence that
oh
can
no,
be
look,
found in these areas that 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 reveals that the current warming is occurring faster,
no, no, no,
10 times faster than the average rate of warming after an ice age.
look. But
That's
that that's
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 a
what that's what the claim is.
Yeah, but that sentence hinges on the one previous to it, not the one. What's it called? It says ice cores drawn from Greenland, Antarctica, and tropical mountains, glaciers show that the Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse. Ancient evidence
Uh-huh,
can also be found in tree rings,
uh-huh,
ocean sediments,
uh-huh.
coral reefs, and layers of sediment rocks. Like, he's talking about additional evidence for the warming of the Earth and the
No, for the
actual
claim that Earth's climate responds to greenhouse gas levels.
yeah,
That's the claim.
but that's what they're, yeah, warming or whatever it may be. They're the greenhouse gases,
Uh-huh.
and to say that, what's it called? Ancient evidence can also be found in tree rings, ocean sediments, and coral reefs and layers of sediment rocks. It's like it's overly simplifying the amount of much more likely not consequences, factors that would actually affect those things.
How? It's not.
Well,
It's just
you're telling me that it
summarizing.
can
It's
only
just
be.
summarizing different types of evidence for this claim that Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse gas levels.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
how I'm reading it.
So
So you saying
the
that there's a
greenhouse
whole bunch of
gases.
other factors doesn't really like I don't understand how that's supposed to in some sense undermine this.
Because it's an attribution fallacy.
How?
It's a cause. What do you
It
mean
didn't
how?
attribute. It didn't attribute.
They're
It didn't
attributing
attribute the climate shifts or changes of greenhouse gas levels to ocean sediments, coral reefs, and layers. It's saying that these are indicators. These can be taken
no,
as evidence of
that's what I'm
this.
saying. They're indicators of those greenhouse gases changing the conditions in the Earth system, right?
Of the
These are
climate
evidence.
responding to the changes in greenhouse gas levels. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So these sediments, these tree rings, and these ocean sediments are responding to the greenhouse gases, right?
They are indicators that the Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse gas levels.
By showing what they're the relationship they're showing is the increase or the decrease of greenhouse gases and the effect that it has on tree rings, sediments, and what's it called, coral reefs, right?
Based, uh, kind of.
I mean,
Um,
what else could they be talking about?
so the most accurate way to put it is the way I keep putting it, which is this is claiming that there's a whole bunch of ancient indicators of a particular kind of relationship, and that is that the Earth's climate responds to changes to greenhouse gas levels. The ancient evidence among which is tree rings. So there's evidence in tree rings. There's evidence in ocean sediments. There's evidence in coral reefs, and there's evidence in layers of sedimentary rocks. And these are places where you can go back, apparently, to ancient times in some way. So, insofar as they're ancient evidence, they count as ancient evidence. They're indicators that the Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse gas levels going back to ancient times. Also, the ice cores have that kind of ability to be able to give those indicators in some way as well. So that's what I'm reading. That your rebuttal to that doesn't make sense to me, because it saying that there's a whole bunch of possible, there's million, you said, maybe you're being hyperbolic, you said there's millions of factors that can affect tree rings and sediments and corals. It's like, okay, but that doesn't change that doesn't necessarily refute the fact that that
Okay,
evidence can be found in these places of an ancient of a relationship going all the way back to ancient times, that between the Earth's climate and greenhouse gas levels.
oh, okay, but that's what we're talking about. Evidence of greenhouse gas levels.
No, evidence of a relationship between Earth's climate and greenhouse gas levels. So we're talking about the greenhouse gas effect, is what it's normally called, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
We're talking about how greenhouse gas levels
okay, yeah.
impact the Earth's climate. That's what we're talking about. There's a relationship between
In
at least two
so
things.
so let's focus on one like tree rings, for example.
Okay.
Uh, so the only thing that can affect the growth of tree rings is the greenhouse gas increase in the
No,
temperature.
no, that's not what this is saying, dude.
So then,
That's what
that's a
undermines your
correlating
criticism.
factor. No, but that's what I'm saying. But that's just a correlating factor based on an assumption. Like you're assuming that this is the primary factor that would cause this tree ring to develop in this way.
No, it does not assume that. All it's saying is that there is evidence that can be found in tree rings.
What
Ancient
evidence?
evidence that can be found in tree rings. I don't know, because I'm not an expert.
But that's
I can
like,
look that up for you.
but then we're talking about we're arguing over what someone claimed or didn't claim. Like that's not
We're
the point
arguing
here,
over what NASA scientists claim, though,
bro.
not random
Yeah,
motherfuckers that don't know shit, bro.
yeah,
But I can look it up for
that's
you.
a
You want me to look up? You want me to
appeal
look
to
up the
authority
tree
is
ring
not a
evidence?
logical is really not a logical argument either.
Tree ring evidence for climate change. I can look it up for you. You could have looked this up
But
just as
no, hold
well,
on a
bro.
second.
This
Appeal
is
to
from NASA.
authority.
Here,
No, but hold on. It's from
it's
NASA or from the president. Like, sure, we can talk about like how someone is likely to be knowledgeable, but there are other people who are as credentialed as the scientists at NASA
okay.
who
Fine.
actually
You
argue
haven't
the
cited
opposite.
any
So
one
the
of them,
appeal.
so you cite them,
I
and
actually I did.
I'll take them.
Hold on a second. Like, how about this? Hold on. What's it called?
Dude. Let me read this, and then you find whatever you need to find. So here's the tree ring thing, and this might explain it. I don't know enough about it to know if this is adequate, and I can look for more stuff. But like literally, I'm doing what you could have done. You're questioning all of this stuff without understanding it. I'm
You're
only
presenting it to me.
advancing it. I'm only advancing it because it's coming from an authoritative source that I actually trust. which are NASA scientists. If you want to pretend like NASA scientists are not trustworthy on climatological phenomena, the same people that like put rockets in outer space and shit, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to climatology. Okay, I guess like we can go there, but like I don't mind appealing to their authoritativeness. I really don't, because I feel like they know what they're talking about. That doesn't mean that they're right in all things.
It's still not. It's still a rhetorically
let me read this and then you can give you your rebuttal. It's fairly logical though, because dude, what do you know how many scientific experts work for NASA, bro?
That's fine. That's still an appeal to authority.
All right, bro. It is an appeal to authority, but it's a legitimate one. I'm sorry. Hold on.
How many scientists work for the NIH, the CDC, and Pfizer and Moderna? We still got pulled along into a complete farce for like 2 years.
That's fair, but they're politically partisan. Is NASA politically partisan? Is it NASA have some kind of political agenda?
It's publicly funded, isn't it?
It is publicly funded, but did they have a political agenda to lie about climate change? What would be the benefit of that?
Are you serious?
Explain that. Dead ass. How does NASA benefit from that?
Yeah.
Also, the scientists that work for SpaceX, hold on. The scientific experts that work for SpaceX don't deny this either. That's a private entity.
Where do they get their funding from?
What the fuck? It's a private entity, bro. What?
SpaceX is a government.
SpaceX has previously been funded by the government, yeah, but like, and it probably still is still government, but there's still a private entity, though.
No, I'm sorry. What consumer?
And also, wait. Also, let's just say the government funded. I'll just give that to you.
No,
so what? What would be okay? Fine. So what? That doesn't prove that their expertise in climatological phenomena is somehow undermined by their public funding.
It also isn't a point. Look, their authority is also not a logical argument. Appeal to authority is a logical fallacy. Is it yes or no? Is it yes or no? No, I'm sorry.
I think it is a legitimate appeal to authority. Yes. To answer your question, however, what would be a legitimate appeal to authority?
Hold on a second.
What would be hold on, let me ask you one question. What would be an example of a legitimate appeal to authority in your book?
I don't think there is one.
So there is no such thing as a genuine, legitimate appeal to authority on any subject matter.
Yes, because people can be wrong. Even the foremost experts.
Even in the context of religion?
Absolutely.
So you can't appeal to the authority of Allah in Islam?
That's not a person.
It's not a person?
It's not a person. Is Allah a person?
Okay. I don't know. I don't believe in that, but
in Islam, for example, in Islam, for example, we have sheikhs. We have people that are interpreters of the Quran. There are people who are
scholars. Who do you pray to?
To our deity.
So the question, if it wasn't a person, then the question, who do you pray to, wouldn't even be intelligible to you.
What?
If you did not regard Allah as a person, then the question, who do you pray to, wouldn't even be intelligible to you.
Oh my God. So we're talking about, what's it called? We're talking about not when we're talking about a person, are you talking about an entity or are you talking about a human being?
So I'm very familiar with religious tenets. Mm-hmm. My understanding is that the followers of the three major Abrahamic faiths mm-hmm. genuinely regard their deities, their respective deities, as persons. And in fact, in some traditions, they regard, and I don't know where you stand, but in some traditions, they regard the very concept of personhood that human beings are capable of instantiating as being enabled by the existence of that deity in the first place. That you couldn't even get human personhood unless you had the personhood in the form of the ultimate being of Allah, God, Yahweh, whatever. I don't know where you stand on that, but that's why I asked you that, because I'm trying to investigate where you stand on that.
That's one of the
if you don't regard Allah as a person, then what kind of thing is Allah?
He is a deity. We don't see him.
He?
Yeah, we use pronouns, of course.
But that implies personhood, and it implies that you regard this person as a person. That's what I'm saying. Like that's weird. That's a weird way to talk about a non-person.
It is, but we're gonna get into a theological debate here. And I'm trying to tell you, this is something that's actually pretty complex and very different from Christian theology and Abrahamic, Jewish theology. We have many differences between those two. As a
Okay,
matter of
okay,
fact,
fine. I don't want to
one
get
of the
into the
biggest no, hold on
theology.
a
The
second.
only
But one of the biggest contentions we have is for them calling um what's it called? Jesus the Son of God. Like that's something that we completely and utterly reject because of this concept that you're bringing
is
about.
Allah capable of loving you?
Sure.
But even the way you Okay, the only point I was trying to make, because I'm not trying to get into a theological debate, and I take you at your word
I
that,
actually do
there
have
is an
to
ongoing discourse within the community of Islam and Muslims about what the personhood status of Allah may even be. What the only point I'm talking about is I know that the ways that are common for actual believers of Islam to talk about Allah imply that they genuinely regard Allah to be a person. And the only reason why I brought that into here is to say that in the context of you or any other genuine believer in the Islamic faith, right, regarding Allah as an authoritative figure on all things, that could
okay.
at the very least be an example
No,
of a
no, hold on.
legitimate appeal to authority.
I
Because
think I
any
see.
Muslim that appeals to the authority of the Quran or that's supposed to come from Allah or have a special relationship with Allah or Allah's will, like that would be I thought would be a like slam dunk example, but you're
Okay.
denying that even that counts. So I'm
No, 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 no.
baffled by that.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. And I think that I know where we're missing each other. And I'm talking about my example that I was bringing up was like the interpretations between different sheikhs, and that we don't say like, well, it's that sheikh, therefore it must be true. If it was written in the Quran, there are certain things that are like extremely point blank. There are certain things that are a little bit harder to interpret, and we actually appeal. In that case, we appeal to the hadith, which is the narration of what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he said on the matter. Like
Okay.
because the Quran itself mentions him as the ultimate authority and the what's it called?
Okay, but
Uh, no,
why
hold on.
why are you
Let,
justified in regarding this person or
yeah,
this tradition
because
as
I'm
authoritative,
talking
and I can't
because
regard
no, hold on a second.
scientific
No,
experts and
look, but
climatological
you're
experts
no,
as
you're
authoritative on
hold on.
climatology and climatological phenomena?
Having authority, which is I'm not saying that there's no such thing as authority. I'm not refuting the concept of authority. I'm refuting, and this is something that I don't think even can be argued really at this point, that authority alone is not a logical argument.
I agree with that, but I wasn't doing that.
That's my entire
That's my
point.
point. Okay,
But you just said
I've already
no. But you
conceded
just
that.
said no. But
I'm
you just
saying that
said
my
you
in this
trust them
instance,
because it's
because
NASA.
they're because no, I not only no, not just because they're NASA, but because they're NASA, they're not particularly partisan at all. Like if you can give me evidence
That
of
like,
NASA being blatantly partisan and being prone to the
are we
kinds
talking
of
about public Republicans
corruptions,
or
hold on, being prone to the kinds of corruption that are being that the likes of Pfizer and Moderna are being accused of, which is a profit driven kind of corruption, right? NASA is not a for-profit entity. They don't make money off of. They don't even have the ability to make money off of lying about climate change. So, like, I don't understand. Like, what would
okay?
even be the
They're
accusation when it came to
funding.
NASA?
They're funding
They're publicly funded, but a
completely.
lot of entities are
Yeah,
publicly funded, and they're not corrupt necessarily. So I don't understand. That's not an argument for them not being
they're funding.
reliable or
They're funding
authoritative on
just
scientific
as
matters.
they're funding just as the funding that other climate scientists compete for is determined by their press releases, what they actually claim as to be scientific truth in order to justify further research. Those government grants they don't come from scientists within Congress being like, yo, those guys at NASA, they got some of the best guys. We should just give them. No, no, no. It comes from their publications and their claims that they make in order to justify more money
So
for more research.
So to be clear, you're saying that NASA is willing to lie about climate change to ensure that they get
I didn't even go
funded
that
for
far.
more research?
I
Well,
didn't
you're
even go that
implying
far.
that, dude. Come on.
No, no, no. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. No, no, no. You're superimposing that claim onto me.
Okay, then
I'm
what are you
saying
saying?
to you, no, I'm saying to you that to claim that they're simply a neutral, completely unpolitical organization, I think because they get their government funding is false.
No, I'm saying that there's nothing that's undermining or corrupting their scientific expertise. You haven't given any reason to suspect that NASA is politically or economically motivated to lie about their findings on
And
climate change.
no, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Questioning, hold on.
I'm not
So you're
even
questioning their authoritativeness on this makes no sense unless you can actually demonstrate a plausible allegation that NASA is somehow not, their scientific experts are somehow
I
not
didn't make any
authoritative on this.
allegations. This
I
is
know
something
that, but
that
that's
we've
what I'm
seen
saying.
before.
In the
No, but hold on a second.
absence of those
Wait. Hold on a second.
In the absence of those
I don't
allegations,
understand.
you're questioning their authoritativeness makes no sense.
Yeah, of course, because it makes no sense. We've never had a governmental agency or a scientific agency like act in a way that isn't completely truthful because of funding, or actually because of any political pressure.
Of course.
So what makes NASA special?
Because NASA, there's no reason to believe that that's happening with NASA.
Oh my
it's not
God.
Like it's not as if every
That's
government.
an argument.
Hold on, it's not. No, wait. So wait.
No.
Are you arguing that every single publicly funded governmental agency is inherently corrupt because they're publicly
susceptible
funded?
to it, and we've seen it over and over again.
No, saying they're susceptible to it is one thing. Are they in fact corrupted or under their scientific expertise?
Is that what I said?
I'm asking you.
But you're begging a question that I didn't even bring up.
I know.
That I didn't bring up.
But I didn't bring it up. Answered it
you're
either.
Begging.
I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna take that as a no. And if you once you say no, I don't know if that's what your answer is. But once you say no, if you say no, I don't know if you do. If you say no, right, then you're conceding my point. You can't just assume or presume that because a government entity is publicly funded, right, particularly one that is scientific in nature, that their scientific findings are somehow corrupt or less liable or less likely to be true.
Again, this is a begging the question fallacy. You're imposing an actual point onto me that I never made. And my point specifically, hold on a second.
I'm criticizing you for not even attempting to make the point you're implying, because unless you do, and unless you can demonstrate it, you cannot question the authoritativeness of. You have no basis on which to question the authoritativeness on the scientific matters as regards NASA and their relationship to climate change and climatological phenomena. That's what I'm saying. So you don't, unless you have an actual allegation you can demonstrate is plausible, you don't get to just be like, they could be wrong. Like what? Like that's a terrible. That's a weak argument.
They could be wrong is a weak argument. Dude. They could be wrong is a weak argument.
They could be wrong. No, it's a weak argument in terms of saying what I'm saying, NASA's saying must be false. If you're trying to establish that, you don't get to say they might be wrong, therefore it's false.
You're arguing against yourself because I never made that point. And you're going to rewatch this. And you're going to go back.
Hold on a second. I'm going to move forward with the authoritativeness of NASA then, because you don't have any reason to doubt it. You don't have any real reasons to doubt it.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
So then what are your reasons?
My point is the authority of any body or any government body, any scientific body, or any persons is not a logical argument in and of itself. That is my entire point, and I've said this from the beginning.
What is rational is that the experts in this domain are the least likely to be in error. That's what's rational about my stance.
Likelihood and whether or not it's actually like logically consistent are two very different things.
First of all, it is logically consistent. There's nothing illogical about any of the claims.
I'm sorry. Wait. So just by the merit of who they are,
I'm saying the claims that they're making. I'm saying the claims that they're making, the scientific claims that they're making,
the claims that they're making,
evidence that they have to back it up. There's nothing illogical about any of that.
No, hold on, stop. You're saying two different things. Their authority. No, I'm not. Stop. Yes, you are. Their authority and the merit of their claims are two different things.
I'm done having this argument because it's going nowhere. I'm going to read this.
You can watch. You can rewatch it. I never made that point. And two,
that's fine. That's fine.
I think it's
you didn't really make a point, but it's fine. No, I'm cool. I'm cool with that because I feel like at this point you're just undermining my ability to prove you wrong. So I'm going to do that now.
Nah. Hold on, dude.
Hold on. The tree thing. I'm going to do the tree thing, and then I'm going to go back to the NASA evidence that you haven't refuted at all. And then we're going to go back to the main claim, which is that your denial of climate change makes no sense. That's ultimately where I'm going to go. So here's your tree stump thing that you call into question. If you've ever seen a tree stump, you've probably noticed that the top of a stump, a series of concentric rings. These rings can tell us how old a tree is and what the weather was like during each year of that tree's life. Mm-hmm. The light-colored rings represent wood that grew in the spring and early summer, while the dark rings represent wood that grew in the late summer and fall. One light ring plus one dark ring equals 1 year of the tree's life. Because trees are sensitive to local climate conditions, such as rain and temperature, they give scientists some information about the area's local climate in the past. For example, tree rings usually grow wider in warm, wet years and they are thinner in years when it's cold and dry. If the tree has experienced stressful conditions such as a drought, the tree might hardly grow at all in those years. So you can tell by the relative thickness. This is the nature of the indicators, the ancient indicators of tree rings that they're talking about. Scientists can compare modern trees with local measurements of temperature and precipitation from the nearest weather station. The National Weather Service has been keeping weather records in the United States since 1891. But very old trees can offer clues about what the climate was like long before measurements were recorded. This field, the study of past climates, is called paleoclimatology. Okay. So they're using paleoclimatological indicators from old ass trees, right, as evidence of the
That's
relationship between
I don't even
rises
know
in
how does that differ
carbon
from what I
emissions
said.
and no, it doesn't. No, so you called into question the nature of the indicators, the ancient evidence, let's say, because that's what they use. That's the word they use
How
of tree
exactly did
rings
I call it into
specifically.
question?
They also have similar things that they can indicators for ocean sediments, coral reefs, sedimentary rocks. Presumably, in all of these cases, there's going to be something about any one of these aspects of nature that last for extended periods of time. Coral reefs, ocean sediments, layers of sedimentary rock. These things last for extended periods of time. And they are apparently, presumably, responsive to the wider climate or environment. That makes sense. So you could probably work backwards through the years, through the layers, through the rings, and get some kind of clues for what the weather was like and therefore what levels of greenhouse gas levels there were. That's probably the scientific logic here. Now, if you want to refute that, you can, but I just wanted for the guests to make sure that I was doing my due diligence and explaining what
Hmm.
the nature of the indicators were. I did that very thoroughly by doing a cursory Google search for tree rings. I could probably repeat that with all the other ones, but nothing about what you're pointing out or questioning is calling into question this claim. And that's kind of
Hold
the
on a
nature
second.
of what I want to get. I'm almost done.
Can
I'm
you?
almost done. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Let's go back real quick to the scientific consensus thing, because for some reason like that didn't stick, and I want to make sure that I get these points out because I felt deprived of the ability to do so. um so I'm going to share my screen again, and I want to show the scientific consensus one. Here we go. All right, are we there? Oh no, sorry, let me share it right quick. All right, here we go. All right, so the scientific consensus: Earth's climate is warming. Okay. So this graph right here, on the graph we have, okay, so these are different sources or whatever. So temperature data showing rapid warming in the past few decades. The latest data going up to 2021. So this is just the past few decades. I wonder if there's
That's since
temperature was going
1860.
back. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm very transparent about that. I'm wondering if there's any going back because I don't know
When you
that
said
they're.
the past few decades, I was just clarifying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'll just read what they have. So it's important to remember that scientists always focus on evidence, not on opinion. Scientific. I don't want to be lectured about that. Scientific evidence continues to show that human activities, primarily the human burning of fossil fuels, have warmed Earth's surface and its ocean basins, which in turn have continued to impact Earth's climate. This is based on an over a century of scientific evidence forming the structural backbone of today's civilization. NASA Global Climate Change presents the state of scientific knowledge about climate change while highlighting the role NASA plays in better understanding our home planet. This effort includes citing multiple peer-reviewed studies from research groups across the world, illustrating the accuracy and consistency of research results. In this case, the scientific consensus on climate change consistent with NASA's scientific research portfolio. That said, multiple studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Here are some of them right here. Show that climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities. Okay, so it's extremely likely due to human activities. I want to note how softened that is.
Like,
All of the evidence that they're citing suggests that it is. This is an acknowledgement tacitly that scientists could be wrong about their claims and the predictions that they're making. And I think any good scientist worth their weight would acknowledge that. So I want to emphasize that because you were making it seem like I wasn't willing to acknowledge that earlier. And
no,
then in addition,
that's not
most
what
of
I
the
was talking
leading
about.
you were making it seem. So maybe that's not what you intended, but that's what it felt like.
I was talking about falsifiability.
In addition, most of the leading scientific organizations worldwide have issued public statements endorsing this position. The following is a partial list of these organizations, along with links to their published statements and a selection of related resources. So if you want to go through and debunk all of these reputable scientific institutions and organizations because appeal to authority is illogical or some shit, and you want to debunk their claims,
So wait, I'm sorry.
feel free to do that. But like, you
Sure.
haven't done that yet, for sure. And until you
Okay.
do, you don't really have a basis to argue against this.
Okay.
All you're really
Let
saying is
me
it's
let me
possible in some possible world, I guess, that this
yeah.
could be wrong. Therefore, we should just disregard it as not being wrong, right? Like what? Like that's a
Yeah.
terrible argument. That's a very weak argument.
No. There are actually basic rhetorical rules that we're completely ignoring right now, and one of them being appeals to authority, which completely disregards the fact that the merit of your argument is what like
But
actually causes logic.
I'm
No,
not
no, stop. Hold
merely
on. No,
appealing
hold on.
to
Stop.
authority. Oh wait,
No, let
hold
me
on. I'm not
finish.
gonna
Let
let
me
you
finish.
misquote me. I'm not
No. Hold
appealing
on.
to authority for its own sake. I'm appealing
No,
to the
hold on
authority
a
of
second.
NASA because hold on. I'm appealing to the authority of NASA for very specific reasons, which I was very, very clear about. Right. I'm
Which
appealing to the
is
authority of NASA because they haven't demonstrated any liability or likelihood to be partisan in any way,
still not merit.
to have any of the negative economic incentives to lie,
Still not logical merit.
and the expertise of their scientists is well documented,
Still
and
not
all of the
logical
things that
merit.
they're actually claiming, their scientists are claiming, have been backed up by all kinds of independent institutions that don't have any ties
That's a
to the
claim.
government funds that NASA has. They're not a lot of these institutions aren't even government funded. So I don't understand where is the
Wait.
argument in the
Which
other
one of
direction?
these are not government funded?
Dude, do I have to go? You want me to go show you? Like
No,
I was
I
literally
dare you to
scrolling
find
through
one
them.
that's not government funded. Like they all get scientific grants from from governments wherever they are. I like what market is there for that research science
So there's no such thing as privately funded scientific institutions, really?
on climate change?
On any scientific topic, really?
Fine. No. Oh, there are definitely, and there's a
Okay,
market
well then what do you?
for those things.
Okay, then I
who's
don't know
the
what you're
who's
saying
the
anymore.
okay?
So I don't know if these specific
There's hold
entities
on a
right here
second.
that I'm scrolling through. I don't know that they're government, whether
Those
they're
are
government funded or not. Some of them are
more
government
likely than
issued
not.
entities, U.S.
More
government
likely than
agencies. So
not, they're
these are
either
government funded.
government, either they're
I don't know
what's it
if the
called?
American Association for the Advancement of Science is government funded. It sounds like it is. American Chemical Society, American Geophysical Union, American Medical Association, I think is government funded. American Meteorological Society, American Physical Society, the Geological Society of America. It seems like because America's in the title, they're probably government funded. I don't care though, because that doesn't mean that they're wrong. But whatever.
Okay.
Like if you're looking for a non-government
Again,
funded entity to
you,
establish
you
that
keep putting words in
the
my mouth.
reputability of the organization, that is a
Okay.
logical fallacy in and of itself.
Okay.
Just just to point that out.
No. Hold on a second. First of all, it is. They don't have to have anything wrong. And you keep doing this, where like you're putting these words in my mouth, and you're begging a question that I never asked. That's a logical fallacy. I'm not even. You're saying I'm implying it. No, you're superimposing it onto my argument. That's not an implication because I'm not. I'm making explicit claims here, and my explicit claim is that the very mere fact that this is NASA, that they have thousands of scientists, that they're publicly funded, that they have some of the best scientists in the world, that they have no evidence of having been what's it called, like corrupt in the past, is still not merit of the actual evidence, the reasoning behind it, and the evidence presented. It's not the same thing. It's merit, not authority, that comprises a logical argument. That is not even
But
something we can
that's
argue.
that okay, but that's what
Two,
I'm saying. The
no,
reason
hold on a
why I
second.
appeal to
Hold
their
on, no,
authority
but
is
let me
in
finish. Let
virtue
me
of
finish.
the merit of the organization in scientific matters
But
concerning the climate.
then
That's my
appeal
point.
to the merit. Don't
That's
appeal to their
literally what I've been doing this
authority.
entire
That's
time. I've been reading all
no,
of their claims. What are you talking about? Like that's exactly what I've
no.
been
Hold
doing
on.
this whole time.
Stop. And two, another thing is that you're telling me, you're essentially implying that the burden of proof is on me to refute this. It's not. The
How is it
burden of
not?
proof. Who does the burden of proof lie on?
The person who's making the claim.
And who's making the claim that climate change is caused by human
Scientists
beings?
that have provided a plethora or a preponderance of evidence that you can't refute. So
Oh, I'm
you're
sorry.
claiming that they're wrong, and you're not
Yeah.
presenting any counter evidence at all. So the
So
burden
so
of proof
you're
is on
telling
you.
me that because no, that's not. It's the
They've
posit. They
they've
posited the claim that this is
and
real.
they provided evidence for it. Lots
Okay,
of
and
evidence, a
th-
preponderance of
that
evidence that you
evidence and
haven't
that
refuted
evidence.
at
No, no,
all.
no. I'm
You haven't even
sorry.
tried to. You
No,
haven't
bro.
even
No,
cited
no,
one single
that's
study.
not true.
You
That's
haven't
not true,
cited
dude.
anything. I've been citing things this entire time. You haven't cited a
Oh, okay.
single
Guess
study
what? Guess
that,
what?
that contradicts or
But
contravenes
do you
any of the
understand
findings
how
of
that
NASA
works?
or
Like,
any of
do
these
you
other
understand how?
scientific
No, no, no. I'm
entities.
sorry. The burden of proof is on them. Therefore, they have to provide the evidence. I don't
They
have to.
have already
Oh, okay.
centuries worth of evidence. Like
Oh my
what?
God. So
Like we
hold on a
went
second.
over
Hold
it
on, hold on.
together,
No,
bro.
no, hold on. Stop. We went over what their claims were, and we're talking about the warming of the globe, and it's been happening without the actual mechanism that they're describing.
That
So that's
dude. But
no. I'm
you
sorry.
only honed in and cherry picked one facet or
Cherry
one
pick.
domain of data, and you didn't look at any of the
I'm
other data
sorry.
that I
Hold
went
on
over.
a
You didn't
second.
look.
Hold on a
You
second.
didn't even
No,
know
no,
about
no,
the
no.
tree rings until I explained it. You
Yes, I
didn't know about
did.
the
What are you
coral
talking
reefs
about?
evidence.
It
You didn't
literally,
know
no,
about.
no, no.
Okay, so
Yes, I
then
did.
refute all
As a
of
matter of
those. You
fact,
haven't
yes, I
refuted
did.
any of that evidence at all.
Dude, you literally cut me off while I was talking about it earlier.
You have the floor. I have to go soon, but you have
Thank
the
you.
floor. Go
I
ahead.
do too. The what's it called? The tree ring thing. We're talking about, and they even cited it. There are several different reasons why the tree rings grow wider or more narrow, including droughts, including temperature, including rainfall, including, and they didn't even mention this, but soil quality also has a lot to do with it. And soil quality does change depending on whether or
Those are
not
all impacted by the
there have been
climate,
fires.
which is why that's the link to
Weather,
the climate.
weather,
The weather is a part of the
not
climate.
climate.
The weather is a part of the
You know,
climate.
we went over this
By your
already, bro.
own definition earlier, you define the relationship between weather and climate as like successive
We
trends of weather patterns, bro.
over
And
the
that's what the
course
climate consists of
over
for
the
you.
course of like thousands of years.
Right, which is exactly the context that they're
So okay,
these
you're telling
trees
me,
are old as shit, bro. That's why they chose the trees. That's
oh
why,
my
because these
god,
trees have been around for that long, bruh. That's why
what? No, no,
that's
I'm
why
sorry.
they're
Which
important.
trees?
These old ass, so the ancient times that they're talking about, they're
You
talking about
know,
tree rings of trees that have been here for thousands of years, bro. What are you talking about?
bro. What?
Like that's
Actually,
like
a lot of those are not just.
paleoclimatology is about,
Yeah, I know,
dude. I
but
just
those are
read what it's
fossils
about,
of
and
the.
so
Oh my
do
god,
you think that they only use trees that are only like 10 years old to indicate these things?
why would I? Why
Like
would I
how
say
old
that?
do you think the trees are that they use?
First off, I'm pretty sure all the trees that they're using are not even alive anymore. Actually,
Fair enough, but they've been around. Like they come from
like
those
a lot of
time
them
periods.
are
Is my
like
point.
petrified
So
and
in that sense, they're that
sure.
old. Like they're not. They may not. They may be dead now. But what I'm saying is their origins are from that long ago, right?
Okay. All
So
right,
that's what I'm saying. That's why
the
that's
time
why they count as ancient evidence.
okay, but each ring is happening during a single year, isn't it? Each two rings
Yes.
is a single year. So
Yes.
the actual factor for all those pairs, the individual pairs, is a singular year of weather.
Yes, which is a part of the climate.
Okay, so they're measuring the distances between those rings and the next one. And then they're
Yes.
using the individual what's it called like spaces and collecting them in total to see like evolving patterns, right?
Uh-huh.
You're not looking at a climate if you're looking at two rings. You're looking at weather, and you're looking at other what's it called like even if you look at 100 of those rings, that's 100 years. Like that's not even climate. That's we're still talking about the scale of weather. And we're talking about like environmental factors that go along with that, including soil quality, which are affected by the fauna around them and are affected by the types of fires that happen around them as well.
Uh-huh.
These are all other factors that come along and affect these findings, just as there are other factors that affect the what's it called
But you're just
And
individuating facets of the
no,
climate, bro.
I'm not. And as a matter of fact, the language that they use, like, it gives them clues. It's not a definitive science, as a matter of fact. It gives them clues that they can actually derive assumptions off of. And if your assumptions are
That's
wrong,
how science works.
then
That's how science
uh,
works.
yeah, that's my
And it's
entire
always been the
point.
case that if your scientific
It-
assumptions are wrong, then your theories are probably going to be in error. That's obviously true.
Yeah,
That's a tautological statement.
but that's
What?
exactly that's ex- well, it's obviously that it may not be that obvious if I have to make it, because I'm literally making this argument to tell you, like, yo, like, there are other factors that go along with it, and to assume to make the assumptions that the primary factors and the only factors are these sorts of what's it called, levels of carbon dioxide in the air at the time, it's a limited set of assumptions, of which there can be many, many, many more, which may have a bigger impact on it than that. It's like we're talking about
Dude,
how much
none of the
carbon
factors
dioxide
that
was.
you're
You just said
saying could
no,
have
but
an
what did they
extra
list?
impact on the rings are
What did they say?
non-climate based factors. That's weird. That's a weird argument,
So
dude. The whole
rainfall,
point, the whole,
rainfall,
yes, rainfall is a part of the climate, bro. What are you
rainfall
talking
over the
about?
course of thousands of years is climate,
Does
not
it,
rainfall within a year.
dude?
Oh
Rainfall
my god,
within any given year is going to be a part of rainfall trends over longer periods of time, bruh.
that's why we
Is it
have the word
not,
weather, and weather and climate are not the
dude?
same thing,
Dude, obviously, weather and climate are not the same
bro.
thing. We
Oh my
agree on
god.
that. My point is that the weather patterns over extended periods of time is relevant to the question of climatological phenomena generally. And if you're trying to use as indicators of ancient weather patterns and weather trends the rings of trees that come from those time periods, because those kinds of things affect those rings, that's a completely legitimate scientific exercise. Like you're acting like
Hold
this
on
is
a second.
bad
No, no, hold on a
science or
second.
something, dude.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the conclusions that you derive from it depend entirely on the
No, all
validity
we're
of your
saying is that
assumptions.
these indicators serve as evidence
Then
that
we're not talking about
there's
the
been
same
but when with the rises of greenhouse
evidence,
gases that affects climate. That's
and
what the
that's what
claim
I'm,
is.
and
And nothing
that's
that
the
you're
entire
saying
point.
is debunking or undermining that at all.
Oh,
Like
well,
at
yeah,
all.
because
Like all
you're
you're doing
fully
is
bought into this fake
individuating
claim.
climatological factors
No,
and saying and
no.
acting
Hold
like
on a
they're not a
second.
part of the
No,
climate.
hold on.
Like what? Like the weather is a part of the climate. Like how much
So
rainfall there is in a
I'm
given
sorry.
time period is a part of the climate too.
The
What?
fauna present in that area during that time is a part of
Is
the weather
impacted
and the
by the
climate.
climate too, bruh. How do you think the fauna gets anywhere?
Oh my god.
If not by the weather, how does it get? How does how,
So you're
what
telling me that you
causes
can
fauna to
predict.
be
No,
one
no,
place rather than
hold on.
another place?
Hold on. You can predict the specific fauna that was in those. Because look, each one of those
No,
years.
I
No,
didn't
no,
say
no.
that.
Okay, but exactly my point. Like, that's one factor. That's just one factor that you cannot predict with weather or climate. Which, by the way, you're using an indicator, which is those two tree rings, as what happened that year, right?
Okay, what is the relationship between fauna and the tree rings and the width of tree rings?
So, do you understand the reciprocal, what's it called, relationship between fauna and flora in the enrichment of soil? Like, do you
Yes.
know what
What
monoculture does? Do you know
yes,
what
yes,
monoculture does
yes.
to a
But
soil?
what does that have
It
to
completely.
yes. But
So
okay. But how
the presence of fauna directly affects the ability of vegetation to continue sustained growth in an area.
right? And a whole bunch of other things
And
do too that are part of the climate, like sunlight and rainfall and right,
but
right.
yeah, a whole
Okay.
bunch of other things that
Okay. But
have
that's all a part
some
of
of
the
them.
climatological phenomena that is in question, right?
Yo, dude,
It's a part of
and
the environment, bro. Like
no. But you're. I don't think you're understanding that you're making assumptions ahead of what this thing can actually tell you. Like, you're talking about a climate within a single year. Like, climate is not. It can't be measured in a single year by definition.
first of all, yes, it can. But secondly, it's
No,
not
it
just
can't.
1 year.
No, it's
It's
not.
it's it's
Yo,
several years
by
worth of rings.
definition.
Hold on.
No,
It's
no.
several
Hold on a
years
second.
worth of
Hold on a
rings.
second.
The
Hold
individual
on a second.
unit of time that we're measuring in
No, I
using the
get
rings
you.
is
But
1 year.
even in
But there's hold on. There's
even
never one
five
tree with
years
hold
is
on.
too short of
Trees
a
are not
period.
consistent of one ring though. They always
Okay,
have a whole bunch of rings,
I
and so
understand that.
all those rings are years, right? And
Yes.
what we're
Uh-huh.
and so the reason why they're so useful is because you're never every time you're dealing with a tree like this, you're never dealing with 1 year. You're dealing with a lot of years.
I'm not talking about that. Like
Then I
you're
don't
missing
know
my
why
point
you're honing
entirely.
in on.
No, because no, you're missing
Why are
my
you
point
isolating one ring out of like?
because if we're gonna talk about climate, we're gonna
Mhm.
like we have to say like okay, it's the entirety of the tree rings. Like if this
Yes,
tree was around for 4,000 years, right?
yes, yes,
That's
yes.
a climate.
That's dude. But it's not one. First of all, they don't. Do you think that they just pick one tree and do these, or do they do like
No,
does like a
I don't
lot
know
of
why you
different trees
keep
from a lot
asking
of
me these
different places
questions.
on
I
the
don't know why you
planet?
keep asking me these questions. Like my thinking about this is that simple. The point of
I
it
don't know the
is
point you're making. I don't
no.
understand the point you're making.
I
How
get
is
that,
any of this
but you know that my
refuting this is
reasoning
an
is nowhere near that simple, and like
okay?
that's
Just
actually not even
in
a
plain
useful question.
language to be
But
charitable in plain language, what is the point that you're making about
the point that
these
I'm making
about using tree rings as
is
indicators as evidence for climate change? Like, how is it
the
not good
point
evidence
is the, okay. It's not that it's not good evidence. It's good evidence for what is what I'm saying.
for climate
It's
change?
like that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like, look, if you're gonna talk about not climate change, it's not just climate change. The climate changes, we know that,
Okay, fair
and
enough. Fair enough.
we're talking
It's
no,
evidence.
we're
Let me
talking
specify.
about
It's evidence
carbon
for the
dioxide,
relationship between. Hold on. It's evidence
carbon di-
specifically. No, the claim that NASA made on the slide that I showed is that it's evidence specifically for a relationship between two things: the rising of greenhouse gases and the impact that has on the climate
Okay,
over time.
so greenhouse gases
Yes.
being the primary cause for the fluctuation in these conditions is
Yes.
what I'm talking about. It's not good
Yes.
evidence for greenhouse gases alone being the primary factor because there are so many other factors that are going along with it that aren't
No,
simply
nobody
caused
said greenhouse
by.
gases alone, though. It's that
I said
dude.
primary factor.
Are you just
Okay,
denying
primary
the greenhouse
factor.
gas effect? Are you denying the greenhouse gas effect? Are you saying that there is no such thing as the
But I
greenhouse
said
gas effect?
primary factor, didn't I?
Yes. Yes.
I did, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
is that
Yes.
does that mean
Yes.
it's only greenhouse gases?
You said only though. You said solely and only. You use
Okay,
those
and I
terms.
corrected myself. I said primary.
Okay, fine. So yes, it is it's one of the biggest factors that contributes to
Okay.
climate change, bro.
Okay. So exactly. So we're talking about what's it called?
Yes, it's a primary factor. It isn't the only one, but it's a huge one. It's one of the biggest ones.
As a matter of fact, it's like, look, and we talked about this earlier, and it seems like you don't see any issues with that. Is that the actual effect that greenhouse gases have on the temperature, on the global average temperature in the world? Like that, it's not commensurate with the actual claims that are being made. Which is, for example, that the levels, and this is your chart, by the way. I'm using your chart. You presented this evidence to me, right?
Yeah,
That from the 1950s on, we have had an unprecedented, an incredible spike
I got.
in carbon in greenhouse gases, right?
Yeah.
And that's unique for the past 800,000 years, right?
Yes.
And greenhouse gases are the primary factor that drive these mechanisms, right?
They're one of the biggest factors. Yes.
So wouldn't we see an exacerbated effect in those other factors that we're
Yeah, it
talking
stands to
about?
reason. Yeah, it stands to reason that we would.
So why is it
In
that the
climatological
global
phenomena,
average
not
temperature?
just average global temperature. So I want to make
Okay,
that clear.
and as a matter of fact, I can pull up some other stuff about it coming directly from the IPCC, saying like things like like hurricanes are less
Okay, you
common now
have
than they were
literally
before.
2 more minutes because I really have to go.
Sure, but my point is, if we are to take that as the primary factor, there are things that we expect to happen if it is a causal relationship between them, and
Yes,
that
but it's a
causal
complex
relationship.
causal relationship.
Yeah, you calling it complex doesn't mean then how do you measure it?
Dude, weather is so fucking complex,
Oh
and
my,
weather
no, hold
over
on, stop,
thousands of
hold on,
years is
stop,
even more
stop, stop,
complex.
stop, 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 stop. But
Why are we acting
no, hold on.
why are we acting like what
No,
I'm
hold
saying
on,
is
hold on,
far
hold on a
fetched?
second. Hold on a second. Do they actually not claim that a 2-degree increase in global temperature will cause a whole host of devastating effects on the weather?
I'm sure some scientists have said something like that.
That is actually a pretty common claim
Okay, fine.
among
Okay, fine.
even I
And
believe it
one of the
actually came
reasons
from
why
the
that's true, to
IPCC.
whatever extent it is true, is because of the complexity that I'm talking about, bro. Like that's my
Okay, no,
point.
hold on a second. No, hold on. the complexity between weather and what's it called, and the global change in temperature is not the same thing as
Climatological
no, hold
phenomenon
on, hold on, hold
goes
on, hold on, hold on.
beyond just weather.
Oh
It
my god.
encompasses rising sea levels, things like that,
Yes,
melting polar
yes,
ice caps.
yes. And the polar ice caps, do they melt because it gets
These
colder?
no,
They melt
no,
because it gets
they melt
warmer, right?
because it gets warmer.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So temperature.
Particularly the temperature, not just of the atmosphere, but particularly the temperature of the oceans,
Yeah, and the
right?
temperature of the oceans is affected by what?
Is affected by the sun, the solar radiation, how much of the heat is trapped by greenhouse gases, etc. The greenhouse gas effect, all of that.
Yeah,
That's what we're
so
talking about.
okay. So then you're saying that carbon dioxide, which only traps the energy of the sun,
Greenhouse gases, but yes, carbon dioxide is one of the biggest ones. Yeah,
one of the biggest ones, sure. So that's causing the temperature of the
it's
actual oceans.
contributing in a major way. Yeah,
So what are the other
that's
contributing
the
factors?
greenhouse gas effect. Well, like for example, if you anything that produces CO2 is going to contribute to this, right? So if you have if you plant a whole
No,
bunch
no,
of
no, no, no,
trees.
no. The temperature of the oceans and the atmosphere. What are the other
Yeah,
contributing
but what I'm
factors?
saying is all of this stuff is interacting though. It's not
Interacting
isolated
in what way?
in
You keep
dynamic
using
ways.
no, but
So
you're
for
using
example, like you
super
have
vague.
okay, so
Like you're
no, I'm
using really
trying,
really
yeah,
vague
because I'm
language.
speaking about planetary wide climatological phenomena.
Yeah, but
I
that's
can't
not
not
that.
speak in generalities, bro. Like what?
No, no, you can talk. You can talk a lot more specifically about that. Like
I'm
it's
trying
vague to
to
the
though.
point where it doesn't even mean anything.
No, but I'm trying to. So what I'm saying is like there's a lot of fucking dude. Oh my god! Like first of all, I'm not an expert, so I'm trying to like make sure I don't say the wrong
Sure,
thing.
that's
But
fine, but
secondly,
you're
and for
backing claims that
example,
you're not able to
for
actually
example,
articulate.
I know for a fact that there are various different types of vegetation, including but not limited to trees, that actually absorb CO2 and produce oxygen, right? The more trees you have planted, presumably, or vegetation that does that, presumably on the planet, right? Then that can presumably offset at least some of the greenhouse gas effects that we're talking about, insofar as that CO2 is no longer in the atmosphere because it's being absorbed by vegetation. I don't have an expert level understanding of how big of a role or factor that plays. I don't know what the trends in deforestation are. I don't know I know that forest fires,
According to
when you
NASA,
burn a lot of the
the Earth is
vegetation, that
greener
creates
now
CO2.
than
I don't
it's
know how
been in
many
the last couple
factories we
hundred
have
years.
now versus factories we've had decades ago. Like all of these kinds of things are going to contribute to the levels of CO2 in our atmosphere, right? How fast they're
But
being
that's not what I asked
produced.
you though.
No, but what I'm saying is I'm trying to illustrate the like level of complexity. This is just one facet of it that impacts CO2 levels, right? And like,
No,
and
no,
so you're
but
just
I'm not
saying
even
it's just
talking about
weather.
CO2
Hold on, you
levels.
saying it's just
I'm
weather
not even
is
talking
not
about
taking
CO2
into
levels.
account. Hold on, you saying it's just weather is not taking into account all of these kinds of things that I'm talking about because a lot of that
But
stuff is not just
that's
weather,
not what I'm talking about. I asked you
dude. What?
what else contributes to the temperature of the
All of
Earth
these things
and
are going to
to.
contribute to the greenhouse gas effect trends that I'm
Oh
talking
my
about, which
God!
contributes to
No, hold on,
which
You
impacts the global average temperatures of the planet, bruh. That's what I'm trying to tell you. But it's
so the
complicated. It ain't
greenhouse gases.
the greenhouse gases, yes, are one facet of a huge dynamic planetary wide system that gives
So
rise to general trends all over the planet over extended
okay.
periods of time, bro. Like
Okay,
that's
so
how do you
no, 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 no.
how more nuanced do you
Because
want me to be than that?
well, you're not being very nuanced at all, actually. And I
Okay,
keep
what
asking you the
nuance am
same
I missing?
question,
What
and I
nuance
keep
am I
asking you
missing?
this question, and you keep dodging it.
I'm
If
not trying to
the
dodge
primary,
anything.
no, hold on, the greenhouse gases
Mhm,
are one of the main factors in
mhm.
increasing the temperature.
In a complex
The
system,
greenhouse
yes.
gases,
Yes.
right?
The greenhouse gas
What
effect,
else?
the greenhouse gases and the greenhouse gas effect that they produce
Yes,
in the
what
atmosphere. Okay.
else contributes to the warming of the temperature of the Earth?
The sun, solar radiation. That's where the
Okay,
heat comes from, and it gets trapped in
and
the
it's
planet.
trapped. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, but that's the
Yeah.
greenhouse gas effect.
Yes.
What else?
What else other than that contributes to the greenhouse gas effect?
No, to the rise in global temperature.
I don't know. What do you mean? What else? Like, the greenhouse gas effect is. I'm talking in generalities again, and I'm talking about. So there's
So
general
what
trends
else is
about.
there? But
I don't know. I don't.
you
I
said it's
don't.
one of many.
Other than,
You said it's one of many.
that affect the climate. That's what I was talking about.
So what else could it affect? What are we talking about here?
What? Oh my god, bro. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
no, because you're telling
I'm
me
saying there are a whole bunch
no,
of things that
I'm
affect climate that go beyond weather. That's what I'm saying.
I never
Right.
even said the weather affects climate.
Okay.
That's not
Well,
even a
then
claim
I
that I
don't know
made.
what you're asking, man.
I
I'm trying my best
what
to answer you, but I don't know what you're
you
asking.
said the temperature rises because of greenhouse gases.
The greenhouse gas effect, yes.
Is there any other reason why the temperature would rise despite the greenhouse gases?
Well, the temperature is not going to rise everywhere all at once, though. It's more
No.
complicated than that.
But hold on a
But
second.
temperature
Hold on a second,
rising
dude.
in general, like general trends in temperature rising, is something correlated with the greenhouse gas effect.
Yes,
from my
but
understanding.
we're talking about the average global temperature, which is not a metric that I made up. It's a metric that they use and that they actually.
Fine. I don't even know that I don't even know that it's true that the average global temperature rises with increased carbon emissions anymore. I know that there are certain places on the planet where it does, and I know there are certain places on the planet where it doesn't. But I don't know how that impacts the average global temperature.
So then what causes the average global temperature to go up?
In general, it would be I don't know enough about any other things that could possibly contribute to warming the planet, global warming, or rising temperatures.
You to know that if you're gonna make a claim that this is what's actually the mechanism.
But I'm not an expert, though.
Yeah, but you're still making.
I'm relying on the experts and I'm citing them, and I actually cited them.
That's fine. That's fine. But that's still
why
not.
Why are you questioning me and acting
I'm
like
questioning you because you're making a claim.
Can't answer you.
Oh my God! No! Hold on a second. No. This is not what we're going to do.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. So I am not an expert and I can't answer the question.
No, that's not.
Therefore,
the
there's no answer.
That's not the point.
Then what is the point?
That's not. I
really got to go, dude.
Sure. And we can pick this up some other time. But you're making a truth claim based on something that you believe in faith, not because you understand the actual mechanism.
I defer to experts. That's not a faith-based thing.
It is. You defer what? You defer what?
To the science.
You defer the understanding of
climatologists.
You defer the understanding.
Who I know for a fact understand this phenomenon better than me. Yes, I do. What?
No, you don't. They understand.
How do I not know that?
Okay.
What is preventing me from that knowledge?
So I thought you were saying something else. You are deferring understanding onto them, right?
No, I'm deferring to their expertise in terms of the authoritativeness of the claims that they're making, and their relative knowledge by comparison to mine, my lack thereof, of the relevant phenomenon in question.
So
I'm deferring to them, which is a rational thing to do because I know that I exist in a society. I know I exist in a society where people know things that I don't know, and so the people who are going to be expert climatologists are going to be. No, wait. It's reasonable to trust in the expert claims of experts in any domain. Hold on. Again, it doesn't mean that. Hold on. Wait. It's a faith. It doesn't mean. Hold on. Wait. It doesn't mean that they're infallible because that's really the only point you're really trying to make.
Yeah,
but hold on. But wait. They're less likely to be wrong than you are because you ain't an expert either. So like,
that's fine.
Why are you acting like? Why are you acting like that's an unreasonable position? Why are you acting like that's an unreasonable position?
Because that's the thing. Their likelihood to be wrong, based on like a claim that they're making, as a matter of fact, I'll even take that back. Their likelihood to be wrong about this is based on not just what they claimed or what their expertise is, but it's also based on certain things, like, for example, whether or not the assumptions that they've made in the research before it even started, whether or not those things are right or wrong.
Of course, I already admitted this.
But so it's like if I come into question,
though, bro,
my God,
you're not acknowledging that.
Yeah, there were plenty of experts who would prescribe cigarettes as medicine.
Okay,
that's great.
I acknowledge
be an expert,
the fallibility of experts. I'm
exactly.
saying
that's why appeal to authority is not a logical argument.
But it is reasonable. My position is reasonable. God. Because they are less likely to be wrong than the layperson like you. So with no scientific expertise, with no scientific evidence,
ad hominem.
with no, this is not ad hominem. This is not. I'm not insulting you. I'm saying you don't have any expertise.
No, but the merit.
You don't have. Hold on, wait. No, I'm evaluating. I'm evaluating. Hold on, I'm evaluating the merit of your position in light of these facts. You don't have any scientific expertise, which is an indicator that you're less likely to be able to take into account all the relevant information you need to. You don't have any scientific evidence backing up or debunking any of the evidence I presented from the experts.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
So wait, hold on, wait. So in virtue of those two facts, right? It stands to reason that you're more likely to be in error with respect to your evaluation of the merit of the scientific claims in question than the people who actually do this for a living, for real, who actually conducted the experiments, who actually have way higher of a likelihood to understand the nature of these experiments than either of us do. That's a reasonable position. You're making it sound as though that's not a reasonable position because a person can possibly appeal to authority for authority's sake, which I'm not doing, and just because in virtue of that abstract possibility, therefore I'm wrong and the scientists are wrong on climate change. That's a weak argument, dude.
Again, I don't know whose argument that is. It ain't mine.
Then what is your argument? State it simply, because I gotta go.
Okay. Point is, the merit of their claims solely lies on the actual validity of the science, not the actual person who is coming from. It could be coming from a homeless guy down the street. Whether or not you take him serious.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think you are? How capable do you think you are? 10 being you're really you're like amazing at it. 1 being you're not capable at all. How capable do you think you are of evaluating the merit of the scientific claims in question?
That's hard to say. It is.
All right. I would evaluate myself at about a 5 or 6 tops. I don't think you're going to be higher than that. And so it stands to reason that a scientific expert and a climatologist would be way higher on that scale, right?
But that's the thing, dude. You're saying that based on things that you don't quite understand and that you believe to be true based on the fact that it came from a certain person.
I'm deferring to experts who do understand.
Exactly, but it's your faith in someone else. Okay.
It's not blind faith, dude. This is a reasonable thing to do.
Did I say blind faith? No, did I say blind faith? No, hold on. Did I say blind faith?
You did say that. You literally said it's because of your...
Stop.
Yes, you just said.
I said blind faith.
Yes, you just said
blind faith.
Your faith.
The word blind came out of my mouth.
Whatever. You didn't say blind.
No, that's not true.
Okay, fine. You said faith, though. You said faith, though.
It is faith.
Okay, you're using that word in a way that suggests that what I'm doing is blindly just throwing it to the wind. Just be like,
you're
just fucking soothsayer, fucking, I don't know, like a tarot reading. Like these motherfuckers are fucking, these are expert climatologists, bro. These are expert climatologists.
Jason, tell me what I think, please,
dude. I'm saying you're talking when you say this is because of my faith, you're suggesting that it's all I'm doing is just arbitrarily believing in something when I actually have a rational basis to believe.
Instead of asking me what I actually mean, you're continuing.
Ibrahima, you're still implying things, even though you're not saying them explicitly, and I'm calling them out because the implications are false.
If you're interested, you can ask me what you think I'm implying.
What did you mean by faith? What did you mean by faith?
The thing I mean by faith is that there are certain things about their argument that you don't understand, that you cannot articulate, right?
Right. Both of us are in that boat, by the way.
Oh, sure. Well, up to what point?
Because honestly, out of us two, I think I understand climate science better than you do at this point.
If you understand something that's false better than I do, that's not really a flex. Anyway.
You don't even, dude. What I'm calling into question is your ability to evaluate whether it's false in the first place. 1, 2. My point is, I know more about the relevant science than you do. You didn't even understand how the tree ring thing worked, bro.
That's not true.
Then why did you question it as if you didn't understand how it worked, then, bro?
I didn't question it as if I didn't understand how it worked. I questioned it, bro. Listen, the literal definition that you pulled up literally talked about the same things that I did. Literally,
you didn't talk about it until after the fact, though. You were repeating things that I said.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I actually, you can go back and watch it.
Never mentioned anything about how tree rings work until after I read that, dude.
Jason, go back and watch the footage. It's on there.
I remember it, but I can watch it. It's fine. I have to watch it anyways to edit it.
Yeah, you got to watch it anyway, and you're going to see that you're wrong.
This is the longest segment we've ever done. All right,
I know.
I gotta go. So you got to get your last words in.
Yeah, look, point is, there are a lot of inconsistencies that are being essentially skirted under the what's it called, the wayside. And the main one being the greenhouse gas effect being the cause of global temperature rise. You told me that the greenhouse gas effect is the primary cause. And you told me actually you don't know that if there's any other causes. You said that of the rise of the temperature of the oceans and the atmosphere. And
no, the rise of the average global temperature was what I was saying.
But you said that it then causes what's it called, the temperature rise in the ocean, which then causes polar ice caps.
The greenhouse gas effect contributes to rising ocean temperatures and rising temperatures in various places.
But I asked you what else.
But you said average global temperatures. hold on.
Yeah, but I asked you
Average
what else
global temperatures
contributes
is
to
not
it.
the same thing. Average global temperature is not the same thing as causing the average temperature in the ocean to get to go higher, or just ocean temperatures in certain parts of the ocean to get higher.
Okay, so
That's
exactly, but
that's
one
not
of
the
the
same.
charts that I showed you, was the temperature in the places where the ice caps melt over the course of like eight
It
hundred
was
thousand
one
years.
place, which is Greenland. Yes.
How many other places are there? There's like two.
Yeah. Okay.
So 50%.
First of all, I don't know that Greenland covers the entire North
And
Pole,
actually,
but fine.
Antarctica actually is a continent.
I
It's
know.
not just it's actually a landmass. So
Right.
we're talking about the North Pole, which
The
is
ice
not really a
shelves are melting.
landmass. Yes,
Right.
and we're talking about a land. We're not talking about a landmass. We're talking about ice caps, which is very different
Okay.
from the landmass that is Antarctica.
Okay,
So
that's fine. I
so
agree.
that is actually the place that we're talking about in question. And I showed you the relationship in time between
Okay.
that temperature
I
there
understand that.
and
All I'm saying, all I'm doing is
and
drawing a
hold on
distinction between
and
average global temperatures and that, because they're not the same.
that's
That's
fine.
all I'm
That's
saying.
fine. But what I'm telling you is that the places that we're talking about are being affected by this greenhouse gas effect are not being affected by the greenhouse gas effect in the way that would be indicative that more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere means higher temperatures there. It's
Okay,
not.
so what do you think is causing the ice shelves to melt?
That's my entire point. I don't know, and no one really does. Like we don't know for a fact.
Well,
We really
the
don't.
experts have a theory, and you haven't
They
debunked
have
it,
a
so I'm gonna defer to them, and I think that's a reasonable position.
Sure, but that is an illogical conclusion. Absolutely.
It's the most reasonable one possible.
Not really. No, it's
What
not.
is a more reasonable conclusion, that they're automatically wrong? Because that
Uh,
doesn't make sense to me.
no, actually, you don't assume something to be true just because someone has an authority. That's actually called appeal to authority. That's a
I'm not
logical
assuming it
fallacy.
to be true. I'm saying that it's most
But
likely
you
to be
are.
true, and I'm deferring.
That's
No, I'm
but
saying it's
that's what
most
you're
likely
saying.
to be true. It's the most coherent theory we have, and you haven't presented an alternative one. So even if I
So
wanted
I
to
have to present
believe
it to
you,
alter. So I have to offer you an alternative view in order for that view to be wrong. That's
no,
simply untrue.
you
But that's
haven't even
untrue.
demonstrated the falsity of the view in the first place.
But Jason, what did I just talk about? I showed you that there is no relationship between the greenhouse gas and the temperature in the ice caps
No, you
and the
didn't.
temperature.
No, you did
No,
not.
but
You
hold on a
didn't
second.
show that there's no relationship. You just
Hold on a
showed that
second.
it doesn't necessarily. If you showed anything, you
No,
showed
no, I'm
that
sorry. Hold on.
it's possible for something other than greenhouse gases in the atmosphere to cause the average global temperature to rise. That's all you've
Uh,
shown. That's not a.
so
That's not.
no, but
That doesn't
hold on.
establish. Hold on.
Central.
That
No,
doesn't
no, hold on a
refute the
second.
relationship between greenhouse gases and climatological phenomena at all.
No, no, no. Hold on a second. The central Greenland temperature going back 4,000 years, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
In that period, we saw the highest temperatures in that area to have been higher than they are now twice.
Was Greenland always located in the same spot on the planet
Yes.
relative to the Earth's rotation? It's not
Oh, you're
true.
talking about the
It's not true. It's not true.
no? Wait. First off,
Is the
I answered
landmass
before you
that
even
we
finished
now
the question.
refer to as Greenland always
Yes.
located on the same place on the planet relative to the Earth's rotation? No. The answer is
Relative
no.
to the Earth's rotation or the tilt.
That both, actually. Both.
W- oh,
No.
Okay, no,
Because
no.
because
You're talking
because
about in
once
relation
upon a time,
to. No, no. Hold on.
all of the land
You're
masses were conformed to each other in terms of Pangea, and so those land masses have shifted over time.
that's
They
like
they
a
they
hundred
they
million years
weren't
ago, right?
all okay. Fair enough, but like they weren't
That's
always in
not,
the
bro.
same place.
That's completely no. But no, hold on a second, because what you just said actually does not make absolutely any
Okay,
sense.
explain why.
4,000 years ago,
Right.
Greenland.
No, not 4,000. We're talking about millions of years ago.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Pangea, and
Pangea is like
the
100
continents have
million years
shifted
old.
over time. Right.
What
Like they shifted.
the period I'm talking to you about is the Bronze Age. That's 4,000 years ago. The Earth was literally
You mean 400,000 years ago, or
I said four
just
thousand.
4,000? Okay, so 4,000 years ago, Greenland was basically in the same place. Okay, fine.
Well, yeah.
Okay, we had charts that went
Either
back a
way,
million years, but okay. fine. I guess
Oh,
we'll just
sure.
pretend like that
And
doesn't count.
the one that went a million years shows the same thing, where like the average global temperature was literally peaking several times before the absolute unprecedented multiple times higher level of greenhouse gases. So
Okay.
you're telling
In that
me
million
that
years,
we can
are
have,
you claiming that nowadays Greenland, that landmass has not shifted at all in a million
bro?
years?
When was the last time we had what's it called? First off,
Do you think that
that chart
landmasses can't
is
shift in
not
a
the
million
same.
years?
Hold on a second. Global average temperature again, and we're making this decision. Global average temperature and the temperature in Greenland are two different things. And the charts
The
that I
temperature in
showed you,
Greenland went back a million years, did it not? The Greenland one? How
that
long did
one
it go
went
back?
back 4,000 years.
4,000 years.
Yeah.
So it
And
didn't even.
the average global temperature, the chart, it went back 1 million years.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Which
about.
had 3 peaks that were above the average global temperature today.
Okay, fine. So then I misremembered
In the
them.
last
So fine.
400,000 years.
I'll concede that the Greenland one went back for however long you say it went back.
You
Because I
said
can't see it right
4,000
now.
years.
Okay, fine.
And
I thought
the
that
one
was the one that went back a million years.
no,
Fine.
the one
So in
that
4,000
went
years,
back
I
a
don't think
million.
that the land masses at all have shifted that much. To be honest,
No, they have not.
I think that they have shifted quite a bit in a million years, though.
Even then, I don't think it's that drastic. Actually,
I think it would be significant enough to explain variations in the temperature there. But regardless, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter because it's only 4,000 years. So I'll concede that point. The fact of the matter is, dude, I don't think
it takes like tens of millions of years for these tectonic plates to shift like that. Like a million years is not a long time, dude.
But it can shift significally enough to affect the average
In a million years.
Yeah, I think so. To affect the average temperatures of a
don't think
landmass?
so. I can look it up right now, but I very much doubt that. From what I can remember in geology class, that's not something.
Look it up. I'll defer to the experts, like I always do, like you're doing right now. But the point I'm making is that's a reasonable thing to do. That's the only thing the point I've been trying to end us on is that even when you try to refute these things, you're depending on experts too.
I'm deferring. Okay, and what if the experts disagree? Then what do you defer to?
If there's
the merit of the arguments, like what do you?
No, exactly.
Bro,
wait, hold on,
that doesn't make sense, dude.
First of all, the merits of the arguments are always central, but your ability to actually properly evaluate them depends on what expertise you have or don't have, right? One,
sure,
two,
and that is actually a factor.
It would be the most reasonable to defer to what the consensus is, because that's the best.
And that is a bandwagon fallacy. That is also a logical.
No, it isn't.
Fallacy.
Because if the reason why there is a consensus is based on the merits of the argument. Hold on. If the reason the consensus forms, if the reason the scientific consensus forms is based on the merit of the argument or the merit of the science, then it's perfectly reasonable. It's only when the processes that are central to science are corrupted, and the consensus is formed on a basis other than that we would question. We would have the right to question.
Or they could just be wrong. Like that happens all the time.
Okay, but how would we know that though?
That's why we don't use consensus as a logical argument.
We do scientific consensus all the time. What are you talking about?
That's fine. People do. And as a matter of fact, it's also a logical fallacy. That has nothing to do with me.
We're not using scientific consensus because we stupidly believe that scientific consensus proves the matter. We're using it because it's the best we have epistemologically.
Sure, we can absolutely defer to that. But my point is, it's like that's my entire point. It's still not a logical argument to prove that this is likely.
How can it be reasonable but yet illogical? That doesn't make sense. It's the most reasonable thing you could possibly do under those circumstances.
It's reasonable because you can sort of derive like likelihood, for example. But likelihood and causation are not the same thing. If I'm trying to prove
nobody said they are. Nobody said they are.
Okay, and that's
we have a vested interest in following what is the most likely to be accurate if we care about accuracy in any domain.
Yeah, but
especially in science.
If that's what you want to use as a criteria for this, that's fine. But I cannot simply ignore that.
All right, I gotta go. I'm already way over time, so I'm gonna exit us. Do you want to say goodbyes real quick?
All right, y'all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It was a pleasure
I'll see you again. We'll have the smoke for this, climate change thing again. But you gotta re-explore your assumptions here, my guy. Thank you very
These aren't
much.
my assumptions. These are fucking expert
They are your
assumptions, bro.
assumptions. That's fine.
Whatever, bro.
I don't care if it's the
All right,
president
I'm
of NASA,
about to
bro.
send you off, and I don't want to do it disrespectfully, so I'm gonna ask you. Everybody say
Yeah,
goodbye
man,
to
appreciate you having
Ibrahima.
me. Thank you very much.
All right, Ibrahima. All right, that has been the Black Muze Podcast. It's been a pretty heated one. It went way over because Ibrahima doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to climate science, like at all. And now that he can't say shit, talk about shit. Ibrahima wrong as fuck. We all know he's wrong. He don't know what the hell he talking about. He ain't got no expertise. He ain't got no evidence backing him up. None of that shit. Don't believe that bullshit that he said. I just want to set the record straight on everything I love. Sick of these climate denied motherfuckers. This is my podcast, damn it. That's how we ended it. This has been the Black Muze Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. It's been long. I'm gonna try to cut it up into segments so that it can be more enjoyable, more bite-sized pieces. Until next time, peace.